What up, HyperChange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about the Elon Musk empire, potentially the Michael Jordan of capitalism. We've seen Elon Musk beat the odds time and time again and build one of the largest collection of companies in history, the fastest, commercializing so many technologies like the electric car, reusable rockets, changing so many industries. But we think he just may be getting started and early on in changing so much about our world that we want to take a deep dive and look at what are the companies that Elon Musk is building, what have they done so far, where are they headed in the next 10 years. Just to put this in context, the market capitalization that we have of Elon Musk's empire is 1.4 trillion today. Based on the latest private funding rounds of his private companies, and then Tesla in the public markets at 1.1 trillion. So he's already at 1.4 trillion, which is a massive empire in itself. But we think in 2034, it could be worth 25 trillion, then soon 100 trillion, almost potentially like 10, 15, 20% of the entire global economy in the future when we're going to space, when we're going to Mars, when we have AI and robots is going to be controlled by this. And we've never seen anything like it. It's a new era where technologies are so powerful and creating so much wealth that they're creating as much wealth as nation states do in decades, not centuries. And so now we're grappling with the fact of how to live in this era and where it's just going to keep accelerating.
I think that's kind of why this moment with this election felt so pivotal, is because it kind of was the U.S. government realizing just how powerful Elon is becoming and how much more powerful he's about to become with the extent of his companies and how much they're like kind of, SpaceX taking over NASA is a very big example. And then when you start to have them running the automobile sector, and, the automobile sector and the labor union was a big part of what's been key to the Democratic Party. So the power that Elon Musk has been accumulating with these companies has been massive already, but we believe it's just getting started. And like you said, yeah, we'll be going back to the moon, having autonomous robots, having Neuralinks in our brains, and then people are really going to start to feel it.
And so let's break down all the companies. So Elon Musk, American entrepreneur, we all know that he started Zip2, sold that, started PayPal, started X, which was the financial website, merged with PayPal, sold that, started SolarCity, Tesla, SpaceX. Tesla eventually bought SolarCity.
Keep in mind, he took all of his money from his earnings and went all in on Tesla and SpaceX.
Yeah.
Which was like very bold. And
like most people are retiring and going on the beach, and he's like, no, I'm going to reinvest it all into my crazy next company. So you have this like one of a kind and like win after win, like massive new industry, win after win, like even Zip2. Most people don't know about Zip2 created was a pioneer in mapping technology. That's still like a big way that GPS networks work. Like it was this kind of like hybrid like Yelp and Google Maps website way ahead of its time that sold for a huge amount of money. So it's so interesting how time and time again he's kind of been using software and technology to disrupt industries, and we've just seen it play out with insane success. So today we're going to map out the Elon Musk economy, the Elon Musk empire, all of his companies. So we want to start with Tesla, which is, and we put this all on the sheet, so maybe we'll just run through what the companies are and their valuations before we even deep dive. But we've got Tesla, 1.1 trillion, 100 billion in revenue. SpaceX, 250 billion in their latest private round. We actually, in the HyperChange valuations though, you can see have that at $1 trillion. Because we believe that SpaceX, if it were to float in the public markets and do an IPO, it would trade for $1 trillion. It also owns Starlink. The combined revenue is like 10, 15, soon to be 20, 25 billion, growing rapidly, already getting profitable. So much technology and so much pent up demand for Mars, I eventually think SpaceX shares you could convert for trips to Mars. And so think about how valuable the equity is then. And so SpaceX, anyway, I don't want to get too caught up, but worth $1 trillion. In my estimates, XAI worth 42.50 billion in the funding round that's supposed to be happening right now. So that's like a year or two old company.
Yeah, a year or two old, and they raised $6 billion out of the gates. This was like one of the largest private financings that Elon Musk has ever done, and it's a 2-year-old company, and it's $6 billion. Like that's pretty unique for all of his other companies.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about that one too. So much going on there. X, which technically was bought out for 44 billion. This is Fidelity wrote it down at 13 million, which is how much of a joke like these institutions are who got to buy it, because it's actually not worth that. It's still worth like 44. And in the HyperChange valuations, I actually wrote X at $100 billion because that's what I would think it would worth if it was trading publicly right now. So we have, and then the Boring Company, which is worth about 5 or 10 billion.
Yep.
And Neuralink, which is latest valued at 5 billion, but that was in a 2023 funding round, or it was 3.2 billion in a 2023 funding round led by Peter Thiel. But I put it at 25 billion in the HyperChange valuations because I think Neuralink has already successfully installed in their first patient, and the shares in like the secondary market are going crazy. That's just what I personally think it's worth, even if it's cheaper than that.
That 5 billion was before they did the first ever human to receive, like a computer implant.
And apparently they have the second human, but that's already going well too. But that just hasn't been publicly announced. So, or we don't know who it is. So the point is, according to my estimates, $2.3 trillion worth of market capitalization right now for the Musk economy. But we think that's about to 10x in the next 10 years to $25 trillion, then 100. So now let's break down how that all happens. I think we should start with Tesla, which is the electric car company. Starts out with this super high-end fancy car, the Roadster. Then we go into the Model S. All of this idea, which has now become the Elon Musk playbook that we see across, the smartest founders in the world building all kinds of companies, start with this playbook, which is if you have a super disruptive technology, it needs to start as a luxury product because those are the consumer. You get kind of find the lowest hanging fruit, like what people are willing to pay the highest price for that, and where can you make the technology work. So for Tesla, it was like, wait, with electric, we can make incredibly good fast handling in a fast car. So people will want that as a sports car. So let's make a sports car. That's what the technology is good at for now. But and it's very expensive, but people already buy expensive sports cars, so we could actually do this. So you figure out like the minimum viability, and then all of a sudden you use that production run of those cars to learn how to make a car. They used Lotus and bought a Lotus and refurbished it. That was like a mess to like retrofit this other car. They were like, wait, we need to build it ourselves. So then they do the Model S, do all these learnings, drop the price to like 80 or 100,000, do the sedan, which is another like the kind of most adjacent category you could think of where the customers are willing to pay the most money essentially and want something that's fancy and fast and luxury. And then he's slowly trickled down and commercialized that electric vehicle technology, all the while making batteries super cheap and efficient, making drivetrains super cheap and energy efficient, which has all sorts of other use cases in it, things like trucks, pickup trucks, eventually robots. And so it's fascinating how, the current media, when there was a famous thing that was like called the Tesla a toy for rich people. The Tesla Roadster, the New York Times. And it was like so interesting because that's the take we have on Tesla, which when in reality, the people buying that product subsidize on behalf of all of America what is essentially the Green New Deal, and creating Tesla. This massive new pillar of the green economy has been created because it starts with that little snowball of technology that then gets better and better and cheaper. And so that same principle has been I feel like is a common thread across a lot of Elon's companies, but Tesla has been such a powerful example, and it's still so early in playing out. Like they haven't even began to commercialize the semi-truck yet. And everyone says like, oh, that's late. That's going to take so much time. But Tesla is so far ahead of everyone else in terms of cost and performance with an actually electric semi-truck that can compete with diesel. They have Pepsi testing hundreds of these trucks, making sure it's going to work in the cold, it's going to work uphill, it's going to charge, they can do all the cargo, drivers are going to love it. Now, drivers are like requesting the Tesla truck like crazy. It's about to become the industry standard like that for all of trucking. And once again, that technology all started with that Roadster and that slow commercialization of the battery, the drivetrain, and all like the kind of bones of the EV. And so that vertical integration from Tesla slowly doing everything in-house is kind of what slowly led to all these breakthroughs. So now we have Tesla, which I look at as this behemoth of renewable energy. They're dominant with 2 million cars sold, pretty much 2 million car run rate right now, 2 million cars. Like it's crazy to think of that they started with the Model S. Everyone thought they couldn't sell 20,000. Now they're selling 2 million a year, and no one thought that was possible for an electric vehicle maker. Now everyone's copying them, trying to do electric. Meanwhile, Tesla's 10 steps ahead on being like, electric's going to be okay, but really what's going to change the world is autonomy. And so they've been going on autonomous driving, and I still feel like the world no one's thinking of Tesla as the self-driving car company. Like very few people think of them as that. Most people think of Tesla as the electric car company, but in 5 years, they're going to be the self-driving car company because only like 0.1% of miles are driven in a Tesla right now, maybe 0.001, like not that many. Like it seems like there's a lot, but in the world, not that many. But once you have a Cybercab, it's going to be like 5%, 10%. Like everyone's just going to be, that $4 ride is going to be what everyone's doing. And Tesla will be known for that.
And the compounding effects of this are crazy, right? Like once you start to have all these Teslas on the road that are using self-driving, it's training the AI model to get better, better, and better. So that's what makes like Tesla's advantage so stark compared to these other companies like Waymo and things like that, is that the sheer volume of data is what makes the AI able to train and get better and better. And so as they continue to pump out cars on the road, it kind of has this circular effect of helping them perfect self-driving technology. So that's huge. And we're not even talking about kind of how self-driving is going to transform trucking, right? This is 6 million people in the United States are truck drivers. This is like you start to have Tesla Optimus, in the semi truck unloading, participating there. I mean, this is like potentially a hundreds of billions of dollar business, just semi and autonomous robots unloading, packaging from a semi truck. Like this is crazy.
And like the Cybercab, it's okay. I think so often it's like, oh, is that going to make a lot of profit for Tesla shareholders? Or it's important to think about these companies as like stakeholders in the world. And that's a big reason I think Elon Musk is misunderstood, because he's very unlike other CEOs. Like he has a very like altruistic mission, and that's what really drew me to Tesla, was this idea of like transitioning the world to renewable energy is the reason for the company's existence. Like that's why they build products that have massive potential. That's why they're not trying to just stay in the sports car. Like every other rich guy who builds a car company stays in the super fancy sports car segment. Like they don't want to deal with the changing the world stuff, because that's actually hard. So Elon Musk does all that stuff, and he actually makes a difference. And so you think about the Cybercab, it's not like Tesla's building the biggest company in the world. Is that really good? Who cares about that? What we actually care about is that the cost of getting around our cities has gone down by 10x. The emissions of going around our cities has gone down by 10x. The safety of getting around our cities has improved 10x. So we've had a triple 10x improvement. I think 5 years from now we will, once we see basically Uber at a fraction of the cost at what it is today once you have a Cybercab. So it's going to be much cheaper. It's going to be much safer because everyone's going to be autonomous. And it's going to be much more sustainable because instead of building all these cars that we only utilize 5% of the time, we're going to be building cars that we utilize 50% of the time. So that battery, which all these mining resources had to go into to extract, all of a sudden those get stretched out among way more miles in usage, and the comparable lifetime emissions per mile go down, potentially 80% or something. So this is a massive benefit that is going to, like, Tesla, and they say this used to be a thing that they said, but it's kind of got brushed off, but I still think is one of the greatest accomplishments that Tesla has, that I'm personally proud of as like a long-term shareholder, is changing the trajectory of CO2 emissions. It's like we would have never gone electric. Like no one wanted to go electric until Tesla made it cool, and wasn't just like, we're going to make it cool. We're going to make like every single electric car because we need everyone to go electric. And like, if no one else is building an electric car, like we'll literally build millions. And people were like, that's such a joke. Like what do you mean you're going to build all the cars? Like and then now they actually are. And still the sad thing is no one else can even figure out how to do it well. So they are single-handedly having to do the electric revolution, even though everyone else is trying.
Yeah. It's interesting to see how hard, it's his famous quote, prototypes are easy, manufacturing is hard. Like all these other EV companies are producing EVs at a loss. And in 2018, right, Musk went through manufacturing hell when he slept on the manufacturing floor as he was trying to ramp up Model 3 production. And I think that's what also makes Tesla so special, is manufacturing is a product. Like the Gigafactory is one of their key inventions. It's a key part of their technology stack, is that they've been able to build this hyper sophisticated factory. And one of the big issues with the Gigafactory is they tried to over automate it. They use too much automation. So there's been lots of iteration that's happened in their Gigafactories over the years to get it exactly right, to be able to build these cars extremely efficiently and at scale. And that's the best way to realize the renewable energy revolution, is get it under the tent of capitalism, where you're actually making money on each car. And so unless a company can do that, then it doesn't really matter what your mission is. You're not really going to actually benefit society.
And the factory as the product is such a game changer, because like we needed to reinvent the auto factory if we needed the revolution. Nobody wanted to put in that work. Elon did. And everyone's like, well, why is China working with him? It's like he's the only one who could build a vertically integrated electric vehicle factory. That's why Tesla's the only company to ever have its first ever wholly owned factory in China. Every other car company had to do a deal with the Chinese government essentially. But for Tesla, because they outsource everything and they had no technology, but Tesla has so much to bring to the table that they're like, yeah, build that factory there, train our whole economy on how to build the electric supply chain. This is so valuable for us. So governments are recognizing the value. Like when else do you have a like someone that's like a titan of industry that's selling a factory the size of 50 football fields to governments? Like this is in like it's crazy to comprehend. And now he put one in Berlin, he put one in Shanghai. You know, there's one in Austin, there's one in Fremont, California. So they're all over the world. So that's what's crazy about Tesla's an asset is it owns all of these extremely efficient factories all over the world. And in like this decentralized, vertically integrated approach that is unheard of in the automotive industry.
Do you think all of them are going to be able to pump out the Cybercab, or is like I guess that's very like kind of mentioned yet? Do we know anything about that?
I mean, we know that Tesla is like the best at learning on how to build cars in-house. Like it was so hard to learn how to build cars. Everyone else has been doing it for like 100 years. Tesla's been doing it for like 15. So, but they're getting really good. Pace of innovation, right? That's something we talk about. It's like the Elon Musk-ism from the 2018 earnings call. Like pace of innovation. Like you're gonna get crushed if you're not innovating. So Tesla is constantly innovating, and that's why they if one number they report that's so interesting is their cost to build a vehicle. So their cost to build a vehicle is like gone down to like $35,000 cost, but now they're saying they're gonna get that even lower with the Cybercab. So it's like that doesn't seem like a reach to me. Like they've gotten the cost down from like 200 G's to 35 G's, and now they learned more than ever. They've spent more time than ever studying the supply chain. They're more vertically integrated. They have the 4680 in-house battery cell. It's all signs point to they're going to drop the price even a little bit more. And I'm still baffled that my Model Y, like I've had a Model Y for 4 years now. It's an amazing product. And it's still getting better. Like we self-drive to the studio today, and even you were like, dude, this is noticeably better. We're like, FSD is like ready for prime time. Feels like almost on my 4-year-old car, over 4 years old car. And it's not like they put any new hardware on it.
Well, it's that point about data that I made earlier. Like I think it took him, I don't know exactly the time frame, like 1 billion miles. You've probably seen this chart on like on X, like 1 billion miles, and then just recently they got to 2 billion miles and like kind of self-driving miles used, and that's just going to keep accelerating, right? They're going to be at 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion, faster and faster. And as that model keeps getting trained, autonomy is going to get better and better and better. So the pace of innovation it scales with their factories, with their data. So there's a lot of feedback loops here.
Yeah. And I guess my point is I'm also convinced on this self-driving thing. Like it's been a long time of Tesla saying they're going to do self-driving, putting the cameras in the car, figuring out how to build the computers. And it's also an amazing example of how forcing yourself to innovate creates value in other ways. Like they say going to the moon created all these new technologies that we use today, but like they weren't trying to. It's just kind of like pushing the boundaries of stuff gets you there. So with Tesla, it was like, well, we need to make a car drive itself. That means we're going to need to reinvent a computer chip that can actually like process all this super good data, not on the cloud. Everyone's been talking about on the cloud. But if you're a car, you don't have time to go to the cloud when you're like, this other car swerved. I need to think about what to do right now in that split second.
Yeah.
So you have to have a crazy computer to take in all the input from that to make your car self-drive. So it's really like this robot that needs to perceive where it is in the world on the spot without access to the internet to make your self-driving car work. Where that's an insane technology that nobody did, that Tesla spent years developing this chip. Everyone else is like buying third-party chips because once again, they're run by MBAs. They outsourced everything for decades and decades. Now when you need to innovate and change, that comes to bite you in the ass. So this is just like another example of that. And where am I going with this is that inference computer is now the same computer in Optimus. That whole thing of like a robot needs to perceive where it is in reality and react. That has so much value, not just for a car, but for a humanoid robot. And so now Tesla just stumbled into making the world's most energy efficient chip that is perfect for a humanoid robot. That's why they're building Optimus. It's not like some idea of some weird sci-fi supervillain plot. It's like, wait, we've been building robots with these chips. This is just the next obvious, biggest market that people want. They just don't know they want it. But so that's like such an interesting example of how the self-driving car led to the humanoid robot by pushing the boundaries of technology there.
And it's also like you said earlier about how Elon de-risks things. Like he's always so thoughtful about the way that he hits like milestone after milestone to continue to go after bigger opportunities. Like starting with the Roadster, then go to a slightly cheaper version with the S and the X, and then go to mass production with the 3, and the way that and then the Y, and he just kind of layers these things on, and then he goes for something bolder and like more disruptive, the Cybertruck, and then he's like cooking up the semi truck, something that's kind of like an evolution of that, a bigger scale. And so he's always kind of like continuing to like roll his snowball and like go all in with like the proceeds that he's winning and go after bigger and bigger opportunities. And each time he gets more powerful to go after the next one, right? Like having now, like when he was going after Model 3 and Y, like there was still like lots of risk in the business. It was like, oh, are they going to go bankrupt? Like production hell. But now it's like they have a strong balance sheet. What is it, like $30 billion? They're able to invest heavily in autonomy, which is like a massive opportunity. They're able to invest heavily in semi-truck, which is going to unlock more to be able to fund Optimus. So it's like all these compounding effects. And they've been putting in the work for a long time on the solar business, the energy business, and that's rapidly scaling. And who knows what they're going to build next? They're going to maybe be a massive, solar producer, developer, and become a huge energy utility company.
And I want to talk about energy, but I'm scheming before we get to that, the Optimus, to finish the point on that, because it's I think that's going to be like the new iPhone product. Like we see Kim posting with her Optimus now in the Cybercab. Like I just think we don't really understand how big it's going to be or how it's going to mold into the culture. But I think this is the next big consumer tech product. It's Optimus. Like this is the new iPhone. Like you don't need your phone if you have Optimus, because Optimus can just tell you your text, can tell you this. Like I hate carrying my phone. Like I would love to have some, like, I don't know.
You think you're just going to see people walking around in the wild, like with like the robot next to them as they get their coffee and things like that? Like it is hard to visualize how it's going to play out, right? But it's like, what's great though is that like what Elon does a lot with his companies is eat his own dog food. Where's Optimus going to be first? In the Tesla factory, starting to help out lower costs that way. So now you're going to be producing all these Optimus bots, and maybe you might have a fully automated factory of just like, these KUKA robot machines, and then you're going to have like these Optimus robots and just lower their costs that way. Like that's also crazy.
And if you think about it, it's like there's two markets for the robot: work and fun, almost. Like I'm talking about fun, like kind of. Like work is really going to happen first. Like what jobs do you need it to do? Like what in the factory, like what you're saying, like that's before any of us even think about buying one, there could already be millions of these things in factories doing stuff. So I feel like that's another like framing is like you talk to people who've invested in Figure, the other robot company. It's like people are throwing so many bazillions of dollars at this because they know that there's so much demand. If you can build a humanoid robot that like pretty much does anything remotely useful, like people are going to line up to buy it for $100,000. So it's interesting to see like the pent up demand from the B2B world, I feel like is so massive that's the reason why there's these crazy valuations. That's the reason why Optimus, and I feel like Optimus still really has not been baked into Tesla's share price. Like when they unveiled it in 2021, it was supposed to take like 7 years or so to commercialize. That's what I remember. That's 2028. But now we're here in 2024 and we already saw them walking around the event. They were already doing all this like serving drinks.
I'm pretty sure they said by next year they want to start to have it doing some like small work in their factories.
Yeah,
like
they did.
Yeah.
And so now it's like that's way ahead of schedule. I'm pretty sure. It's like everyone tells about Elon and everything's late, but it's like, wait, like the project that is actually going to generate the most shareholder value, that's the most disruptive, is actually way ahead of schedule. And it's like, that's crazy to even think about. And so that's one reason I've been getting more bullish. Like I'm not selling any of my stock. No chance, dude. Like I've seen them be so, like when I first started buying Tesla, I think the market cap was $3 billion. Like last quarter, they made $2.7 billion in profit. So in last quarter. So like that was their whole market cap back then. So it's just crazy to see when you zoom out, like we talk about this Elon empire thing, like if Tesla's like this supernova ball of energy of like the intrinsic value, like it just keeps compounding at this rate. And you got to like zoom out. There's a lot of ups and downs, but once you zoom out and you're like, I was paying $3 billion for this business that is going to do $10 billion in profit this year. That was such a steal, And so now I'm looking at the business of like 1.1 trillion seems huge, but I don't know. Could they be doing $1 trillion in earnings eventually? Yeah. If they have Optimus. And so
so 1.1 trillion market cap, 100 billion in revenue. A large part of that is driven by the auto sales, but then about 9 or 10 billion is from the energy business.
So we've seen Tesla slowly transition from like fully automotive sales to now maybe 15 to 20% of revenue and gross profit comes from energy and service,
which is totally under talked about, right? Like
most like a big diversification,
massive in a huge way, right?
And they've finally gone 0 to 1. Services is going to take a while to really become a thing, but I love what they're doing there with the supercharger network. That's almost a business by itself. Chevron, like 200B market cap. So is Shell. So much of that is like the distribution and refinement of oil. Well, that's comparable to like the supercharger network. Like,
The
and
gas
so,
stations of the 21st century, but there's not all these competitions. It's mostly just Tesla.
yeah, and nobody can compete with the supercharge. That's the thing. Electrify America, threw billions at it. Everyone's trying to spend so much money, but like no one has the engineering and tech. Like it all goes back to like the tech that Tesla developed and has. It's like when you want your charger, it sounds so kind of dumb and simple, but it's like it's got to work and like the plug's got to be ready to plug in and like it's got to charge fast and it has to like work like every time. Like if I'm on low on charge and like if you're low on gas and the gas station's like, whoops, we're just like pump's broken, no help. It's like, what? Like,
And they're already 3 steps ahead with the, the charging themselves. Like you can drive over it. Didn't they show that at the latest 1010 day?
Yeah.
And then also like the things that kind of go up, like the snake. I'm not sure if they're still going to do that. But yeah,
yeah.
the driving over is a huge deal. So they're always like 10 steps ahead. Just as people are trying to build out the charging network, they're like, well, we don't need a human to like charge Teslas. We're just going to do it like so a car can do it itself.
yeah. And people always talk about the supercharger thing. Like it's so convenient. Like everyone always asks me on one of my road trips who doesn't have a Tesla, like how long, the charging. And I feel like that was such a big concern at first, but now it's like, dude, like if you want to go to In-N-Out at the supercharger, you can't do it while you charge because it's going to take too long to get your burger and you got to like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Well, that's what's cool about what they're doing with that dine-in and the charging station is they're kind of changing culture, like charge and like have a meal or charge
Dude,
and
I love charge and chill.
Yeah, charge and chill.
It's
like
so fun.
Charge and have a meal. It's great. So let's talk about how Tesla is going to go from this 1.1 trillion today to what we think it's going to be.
Okay, yeah.
Like you did your Tesla to the 10 trill video.
Supercharging to cap that, 'cause that's part of it. Is I think like this idea of the supercharger network opening it up to other cars is going to expand the services business, right? So that's the growth in the services side of the business and who knows what else the other come up with. Energy has now also found this 0 to 1 moment of the mega pack. This is a really big deal because the Powerwall, the solar, was distributed, it was small, it wasn't like incrementally material to Tesla's valuation.
And that's more retail, solar on roofs, Powerwall and homes.
Exactly. Retail. Now we're moving into utility, commercial scale, like literally like massive things and massive batteries. I think the reason why a big proof point to this, like a fun fact of Tesla history, is Larry Ellison has like some island that went off the grid using Tesla's like energy business. And that was like one of the first dope projects they did. But like, that's essentially what it is. Like these massive like battery banks for, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, whatever energy you're generating, then you can have these massive mega packs to stabilize the grid. So Elon's talking about this puzzle piece of the clean energy revolution. Solar and wind are intermittent. The sun's not always shining, so you got to store that energy for when you need it. That's why the batteries are such a big piece of it. And then we're talking about Tesla, the battery, the electric car, figuring out that technology, just like it got use cases into the robot. Well, guess with the AI computer, well, guess what the battery had use cases for? The grid. So all that work to make super cheap, awesome batteries now has gotten Megapack to be so cheap and compelling that everyone wants to buy it. Because that was the problem with batteries before, is they were super hard to install. Tesla's productized the installation of the Megapack, which is a huge, huge game changer. So a lot of people will quote the pricing of the Megapack, say it's actually really expensive. That's because they're not including the installation in the price they're quoting. Like Tesla's productized the installation, and that's why they're, I think, installing about tens of thousands worth of homes of power per quarter worth of these batteries now and growing. Like it's already like small cities worth of like homes and stuff per quarter. So
like how big can this be? Like we talk about utility, power generation. Like, are they going to start to get in the solar side of things? Like a lot of that has been residential so far, but are they going to start to do utility scale solar and start being like a new producer? Because like as everything's being electrified and you have the big AI wave and there's a ton of demand on the grid for energy, which is very overwhelming. The grid is super slow to adapt. So how does Tesla's energy kind of products fit into where the grid's kind of moving? And how do they capture like a large part of that value and becoming this kind of new utility company for like kind of like almost like it's decentralized in a way because you can produce these solar farms anywhere. You can put them in megapacks. You can distribute it that way. Like how does Tesla play a role in the new energy economy?
Well, the Megapack business, how big can it get? Maybe they're doing like $1 billion in gross profit a quarter with it now. which is already, I would say, worth tens of billions as a business, maybe 50, maybe 100. And I think that's going to continue to scale. Like the amount of energy we need, like seems massive.
It's going up, like, with AI and all the demand, and all of our appliances are going to be electrified. Like, so
Well, electric cars themselves
Yeah.
are going to boost demand for, so are electric trucks. Those are going to need a ton of power. So demand for electricity is here to stay. So I think this battery product is their AWS. That's been the analogy that's kind of happened so much, but I think it's going to be so consistent, so profitable. The auto business is very cyclical, has very low margins, very big capex. This is a very different business. When you think of Tesla as a Pokemon that's more consistent, yeah, it's lower margins, but it's kind of like locked in, bigger contracts, and more consistent, and not like relative to the same kind of cyclicality of the auto industry. Maybe it is because of interest rates and big projects, but it's just the diversification into this new thing that is now adding a bunch of revenue. And then the big kind of question mark with Tesla is energy generation. So that's been a big part of the triangles. You have energy storage, the battery we just talked about, energy consumption, cars, trucks, blah, blah, blah. But how do you do energy production? So I don't know, solar powers. They have solar powers on their factory. Elon Musk always talks about transitioning the world to clean energy with solar power. We only need blah, 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 a little bit of the desert.
Yep.
And so
he talks a lot about like we could just lay solar over this, like half the state of Arizona or something like that, and we could power the entire world of just from solar panel. So I'm like, when is Elon going to get into like mega scale solar projects, right? And when is he going to build like a solar factory? And like, is that happening? Like you mentioned something about Buffalo, that they were maybe manufacturing solar there, but it's kind of unclear how involved they are in the solar panel production. And this is something that's critical to the reindustrialization of America, is be able to produce solar panels in the United States.
And it almost is like they haven't focused on it. They've been trying to do the solar roof. I think it's just too hard to scale it, so they haven't put the focus in, is my guess. But I'm also like, what about the $30 billion on our balance sheet? Like, can we build a massive solar farm somewhere to power? I guess we're already putting solar on the roof of buildings, but it would be cool to see Tesla operate. And maybe it's not a good use of capital, but it does feel like a Tesla massive solar farm with batteries, with auto bidder software to kind of help balance out a booming city's grid like Austin when it fell down. And I think they're already kind of doing that. But I don't know. That would be one of my questions, is why don't we see a Tesla power, like create a massive energy kind of solar project? It would be cool, but maybe it's not on the agenda for some reason.
Yeah, I think a large part of the issue is connecting to the grid. So they really need to find a way like around how to solve that side of things. And maybe Boring Company can help out there. We can get into that later. But yeah, I'd love to see a massive solar farm in Texas. Somehow maybe you use all the power walls to generate a lot of the energy, and then you have like autonomous semi-trucks delivering these mega packs around the city of Austin that then get unloaded by Optimuses or something like that. There's this whole system, but maybe it's just not there yet for the business model for solar, like how we're talking about.
And the solar roof seemed like the really cool idea, because you didn't have to waste all this land in the desert, and they look beautiful and they look like cooler than normal roofs. So I still think like that, maybe we need Optimists to like install those because they're really annoying to install. But like, I think that's also a really cool future where we have decentralized power, and like you have your own power with your power wall, and like we don't need to have like a massive power plant that you rely on. Everyone's kind of like independent and decentralized, but also connected if we need it.
And they've already built the infrastructure for that with this, solar on the roof and Powerwall. So
Yeah,
that's kind of there already, right? But it's being able to access energy potentially without the grid. Maybe there's a way to get a battery dropped off or something like that.
and
But let's talk.
yeah.
Talk about like this $1 trillion in revenue 10 years from now. Like, is that feasible? Like, how do you see that kind of playing out?
Yeah, so I feel like it's hard to figure out how Tesla's going to enter the robotaxi market, because
Yeah.
that's such a big, like, I don't know, so much rests on that of this. So
Like we were talking about last night, are they going to sell the robotaxis? Are they going to operate the entire fleet? How many are they going to be able to produce in a year? We're talking about 2 million Teslas produced now. Are they going to be able to produce, 5 million robotaxis by a year in 2034, more or less, right?
I think this is the math you got to do. Tesla's going to be able to do 10 million cars, like 10 million times, like, I don't know, 10,000 in profit a year sounds lame, but I'm pretty sure that's like 100 billion in revenue, is like 10 million cars generating 10,000 in profit per year is like 100 billion in profit.
That seems very feasible.
Yeah, so that seems very feasible. So I think Tesla can easily, there's like 2 billion cars on the road in the whole world right now. So for Tesla to operate a fleet of like 10 to 20 million, and this is going to be like accretive and expansion. It's not like disruption, or like replacement. It's disruption. So when disruption happens, you create a new market that's much bigger. So everyone's like, oh, well, Uber's only, 10 billion a quarter. We heard that.
Right.
Well, I think this is going to be way better, faster, cooler, safer than Uber. What are we hearing about Waymo? Everyone who can get Waymo is like, bro, Uber's done. I would never take a Uber. Catch me in a Waymo. Like, they know how much better it is. Like, it's a premium product. But Tesla's going to come in with a lower price with a premium product. So the market's going to expand massively. And then what we're going to happen is they're already on the cusp of not wanting cars in a lot of places. Nobody's ever going to want to buy a car. That's why this whole business setup of like being set up as a business that sells cars is not a good business to be in. And I think Tesla's, like you said, like Tesla's long-term advantage will be their manufacturing skill. That's what Elon has said. So I think the way we go to Austin, it was a pile of mud. And now this factory is the world's craziest factory, pumping out like a gazillion cars, and it's like a Cybertruck coming out of the ground, like Alien Dreadnought. And that's their old factory. Like, their new Cybercat factory is going to be even bigger and even faster and even fancier, even more automated, all with Optimus, pumping out millions of cars from the get-go. Like, Tesla has shown they know how to launch a vehicle program and scale it into profitability like never before. Rivian trying to launch their EV program, the closest comp we have, they're like 20 quarters in. They're still at negative 45% gross margins. Tesla with Cybertruck is already positive gross margins, like 4 quarters in, with like the hardest new car to ever build in history. Like, they're so good at ramping manufacturing, and Elon Musk has said that's actually their best skill. Better than self-driving, better than whatever. So Tesla's finally, once they have the self-driving tech in place, the manufacturing is a piece of cake. And that's why Waymo has to pay $100,000 for their car, and Tesla only has to pay, $25,000 to produce this vehicle that can drive autonomously. And then what does that mean? It's like Waymo just cannot compete because Tesla has such a lower cost structure. So what this all kind of boils down to is they're going to dominate the cybercab industry. The cybercab, if it plays out like I think it's going to play out, it's going to be way cheaper than Waymo. They're going to actually have vertically integrated to build it. Waymo's buying Chrysler Pacificas. They're buying Jaguars. Jaguar isn't even making cars anymore, according to the new commercial. So
and also they're charging at their own charging stations, right? And then the energy that they might be getting could be their own energy. It could be Tesla solar farm getting Tesla mega packs, dropping off at a Tesla supercharging station that lowers the cost even more. So you're essentially could be getting a cybercab ride for dollars or really cents per mile, which is going to, like to your point, disrupt the entire market.
And to really frame why the context is so 10 trillion, it's like, okay, what is the value of this economy we are disrupting? It's Saudi Aramco that actually creates and generates the energy, to your point of like how Tesla does it all, like 1 or 2 trillion there. Exxon, Chevron, another trillions there. Yep. Then we have the car companies with another trillion of value. Yep. Tesla's all of those at once. Mm-hmm. And because they're all of those at once, product is so good and so disruptive, they're going to get market share like we've never seen out of that $3 trillion pie. So now all of a sudden, Tesla's market share, like it's hard to comprehend. That's why I say Michael Jordan is an understatement, because it's hard to even comprehend. Like, it takes so long. It's getting harder and harder to keep studying Elon Musk's empire because there's so much happening. Like, when I first started covering Tesla, it was easy. It was Fremont. It was like they got one factory. They're trying to get production. Like, oh, they're going to build 500,000 cars a year in this factory. Like if they do that, we're all going to be rich. This is going to be a crazy success story. Like, that'll be in like years and years. Like, they're just trying to get like one car off the ground. It's in one factory. And now it's like they're doing 500,000 cars a year in 4 factories around the world. So,
and we're not even talking about like semi-truck. I know like we keep bringing it up, but this is something that's been on the roadmap for what, maybe like 3 years now. They first brought it up. Do you remember when? Like 2021?
2016.
2016.
I believe was the unveiling with the Roadster, maybe 2017, but yeah.
Wow, so it's been in the cards for a long time, and this is something that could, like, how many car companies are also semi-truck companies?
Actually, a lot.
A lot. Yeah. Okay.
But the biggest thing about the semi-truck is like people who drive semi-trucks drive them all day. So I just road trip from Seattle to LA. My car drove me. Thank you, the Hypership. But if you're driving a truck, you will not go back. That's the thing about the semi truck. Like these Pepsi drivers who got the semi truck and literally just kicked back with their favorite podcast on and like didn't have to keep their foot like this and their back pain was done. And, you know, their whole family was like, wow, dad's in a great mood this weekend. Like he doesn't have back pain because like he got the Tesla truck and like actually had fun at his job and like wasn't taking a toll on his body. And it's like, oh my God, like this is going to revolutionize. This is a life-changing technology for those 6 million truck drivers. And it's and for the
people on the
50
roads.
million people who drive next to them every day. Like even on my way here, it's so messed up, but it's like I saw 2 horrific crashes, both semi trucks on my way here. Two people probably died on my way here, just like that was just on my little road trip.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's normal. And we don't even think about it because semi trucks are so dangerous.
This is massive industrial machinery that is loud, but it's also, think about the lack of intelligence in a semi truck that makes it very dangerous for everyone near it. So the amount of intelligence that's going to be coming to the semi truck, regardless of even like self-driving, just like the basic Tesla telling you how far you are for something, like today's semi trucks don't have that. You know, like simple stuff. When you're driving something so large, it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, such cool potential. So I don't know, but I'm trying to think of how to wrap up Tesla. I mean, I think this idea of the self-driving car is super big. Like I think we've summed up of how that kind of levels up Tesla to the next company. Is not Tesla, not the electric vehicle company, Tesla the self-driving company.
And it's a self-driving company with the mass manufacturing capacity, right? Like people say, oh, Waymo, but it's like the whole point is that you can be able to produce 10 million of these at a cheap price.
And you just think about this at a high level. Like if you were going to try and make something drive itself, would you be like, yeah, I'll code the software and like put the sensors on, but like then you're going to build the car and then you do it. It's like, wait, like I wouldn't trust, like the more parties you have involved in that loop with that technology, like the more trust and interoperability you have to build into the system. Like, I don't know how bullish I am on interoperability. Tesla's saying they want to license out FSD to other companies. That'll be super interesting if that happens, because it almost has to, because once it gets so good with so much data and it's the safety data is so obvious, if you're Ford or GM, you have to license Tesla FSD. So that's one of the massive catalysts that people think is coming. And that's just another example of you develop these technologies because you want to be self-driving. Oh, guess what? Now Ford is going to pay you $3 billion a year, 100% profit margins to license it.
But do you even think these auto companies are going to be around? Like, I know that's like a crazy question, but like when I think about the future, I kind of just see Tesla in cybercabs personally.
Yeah, I'm not very bullish on it.
Right? Like you're not bullish on seeing
like any other car companies besides like Tesla. Like Rivian seems to have a great product, but even they can't figure out their business model. So it's the more you study what has happened in the car industry, the more it's just like, it's almost a little bit sad of how no other electric car company is gonna make it probably. Like every legacy company has tried to do electric vehicles, can't make a profit and is like pulling back. And like Rivian stock's down 90% and they're the best other EV. And now they have to do this scramble with Volkswagen, who's also dying because they're both drowning and because they can't make money. So it's like,
yeah, to try to like sum it up, like that's what makes Tesla so special, is having all these vertical integration pieces that continue to have compounding effects. All the cars on the road for all the compounding data, you know, owning the factory, the energy, the supercharging network, like all these things are massive compounding effects that makes Tesla's advantage so large compared to any competition, whether it's traditional auto trying to get into EV, new EV players that have tough balance sheet problems, you know, Waymo with the inability to scale their manufacturing and make it cheaply. So that's really what makes Tesla so special and has like a kind of a path to this $10 trillion market cap.
And then I guess we end it with the path to like, you know, 50 or 100 trill with Tesla, which is using that manufacturing to build robots. And that's where the next case of this goes. Like I really, like we saw it with Apple, like, so remember, like it was the computing device that everyone needed that was like $500 to $1,000. And it changed everything and created, like, there wasn't really a $1 trillion company. Like, that idea was ridiculous. And then Apple became, like, this $1 trillion tech company.
But they went from, like, $1 trillion to $2 trillion in, like, a very short period of time.
Yeah, and now they're, like, $2 trillion or yeah,
$3 trillion
more.
Now, yeah.
And so I think the optimists, like, just because we have a big number now, like, that people get clouded with that judgment of, like, we're already at $1 trillion, like, that's such a big number. But we're not putting in context how historically, first of all, there's inflation, but historically these disruptions always cause the next $10 trillion company isn't a crazy prediction. That is inevitable. That's not a prediction. That's like there's gonna be a bunch of $10 trillion companies 10 years from now. So it's just about who, and then there's gonna be $100 trillion company soon. And you reverse engineer that of like who's doing that, what's the product with the margin, with the staying power that's gonna build the app software ecosystem that has the hardware tech play that's also vertically integrated with the manufacturing. Oh, it's Optimus. People need, there's 2.3 billion smartphones sold a year, 2 billion smartphones sold a year. Like, I think we can sell that many Optimuses, but these don't cost 500 to 1,000. They're going to cost 10,000 to 50,000 or more. So this is like the smartphone market, which is the biggest, fastest growing like product market that we've ever seen maybe in the history of the world, I think is going to be like a joke compared to the humanoid robot market. I know like we always think that, and it's like, oh, this is the unlimited TAM product, but just to like frame it with the iPhone, like it's going to cost 50 times more out the gate, and the total TAM at maturity is like quintuple.
It's all of human labor potentially. Like it's that dramatic.
Like I'm gonna have a bunch, probably.
Yeah.
Like I want to have like I have a bunch of like big schemes that I need like help building, and like I wouldn't mind having a like bro, you know, like I'm already like scheming on
Tesla alone could have hundreds of thousands of autonomous robots, if not millions of autonomous robots, just to support their business lines, laying down solar panels in their factories, fixing their charging network. Like the entire workforce of Tesla could be Optimus.
That's a crazy prediction. But okay, so I mean, Elon's cloned AI in an Optimus body will be this that is the techno king.
Okay,
but,
so Tesla's the largest company. Yeah, let's go to SpaceX.
Okay, so we probably have taken that was a great ramble. Now let's go to SpaceX, which is so fascinating because I think this is the hardest. Like we were joking about hearing startup pitches that we just think are ridiculous. Like if you pitched us SpaceX now, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like this guy, like there's no way. And
so like we're gonna compete with NASA and we're gonna like send humans to Mars eventually. Like
have you ever built rockets? No. Like what'd you last time? Software company. It's like okay.
I'm gonna build rockets. I'm gonna go to Russia and like learn their ways of how they build ICBMs. Like
yeah,
you know.
And yeah, we're gonna build the factory in Los Angeles. Yeah, like the city of Los Angeles. It's like well, but there's no factories there. Like who builds rockets there? Like what?
And to take all your earnings from, you know, selling PayPal, what it was like 90 million, and go all in on building this, like just the amount of ambition is mind-boggling. Like so few people would go all in on a rocket company like 20 years, you know, like no one. Like that's why Elon's 101.
And that's why what is that common thread is that mission. SpaceX has a mission to go to Mars. Like Elon wants to go to Mars. You can say whether he's a sci-fi nerd and like just wants to go to space. I think that's such a bad take on like we are literally just like an animal on a flying rock through space. Like let's expand into another flying rock and then another flying rock and live like Star Trek. Like how is that not our destiny?
And to protect like the light of human consciousness. Like there's existential risk for all of humans to be on Earth. But when you're multiplanetary, then the meteor or you know a massive virus couldn't wipe out the entire species. You're ensuring the light of consciousness, which he talks about is a key part of the mission of SpaceX and what motivates him to build such a difficult company because the mission is so critical to the future of civilization.
And it's like, are you on optimism or like not optimism? Like to me, optimism is like expansion, new stuff, excitement. Or do you want like the shrinking and like deceleration of humanity? Like, no. Like, let's stay on this planet. Like, let's like get smaller. Like, let's not have babies. Let's like do it and like let's just shrink until we go away. Like, I don't know. So SpaceX represents such a bigger. It's bigger. It's almost bigger than a government. It's like an initiative by humans to use resources and their willpower to expand into space. The fact that it's been done, this could not be done by anyone else other than Elon Musk. Like, first of all, the financial engineering of the company to get the right amount of capital, to keep it so he has control, to perfectly dilute the perfect amount, to never sell more than he needs to never get too high with the valuation. Like this, and that's why we're valuing it at SpaceX at $1 trillion, even though if you Google it, like the AIs will tell you it's 250 billion. Well, we're still one step ahead of them because that's not the floating true value. I promise you, if SpaceX floats, it's closer to $1 trillion than 250, including Starlink.
Every investor we talk to wants to buy as much SpaceX shares as they possibly can and can never get enough.
Like literally the smartest billionaires in the world, that is their like de facto like role. So it's hard to eat like. And the reason is because the smartest engineers in the world, the top two places for them to go are Tesla and SpaceX. Companies are just groups of people. Engineers are actually what build the technology and systems and processes to create value. So the places with the smartest engineers are obviously going to come up with the smartest technology, create the most value. That is why what Elon Musk is, he's not a rich guy. He's not a businessman. He's not like a politician. He's not anything other than just an engineer who's trying to get shit done. And he's realized he's had to engineer society to get his projects done. And that's why you're seeing him going to politics. That's why you see him in the press. That's why you see him do all this other stuff, because he has to like truly what he is an engineer. And so
he's an engineer to strengthen the human race, though. Like his focus is to make our civilization the most prospering civilization as possible, and
by building useful things as an engineer.
Yeah, and that involves like how we adapt with AI, and evolve as a species, and we Neuralink, how we expand off planets, how we become a sustainable economy so we don't die from climate change. Like he cares about how the human race thrives. He cares about consciousness, and that's what makes all of his companies so special.
And that's why he has the true like grit to push through the impossible. Like so many times, it's like if you don't love what you do, if you don't have a really strong like fire, I know it's so common, but it's like, dude, you're not going to push through. So Elon Musk is the most extreme version of that we know. And people have such a hard time understanding him, but it's like, dude, like this guy is so smart and has so much passion that like that is why he is willing to just risk it all and sleep on the factory floor and like who gives a shit how rich I am? Like, I just want to build this rocket because I have so much passion to get to Mars. And like, that's literally what it is.
And it's funny though, because people might hate on Elon and say, hey, why are we giving this, billionaire, why is he focusing on space? We should be focusing on Earth. Like what, this isn't a good use of capital, resources, time, attention. But if you look at it, the NASA budget from 2002 to 2024 was $435 billion. SpaceX raised $10 billion during that same time period, a fraction of NASA's budget. Why? Because they're able to build things at a fraction of the cost and being able to reuse rockets. So this is actually helping taxpayers achieve more with less, which I think is not well understood, that by what Elon's been able to achieve with SpaceX is actually saving people money, and in addition to all the things that he's accomplishing.
Yeah, because the ULA, the United Launch Alliance, Boeing and Lockheed Martin was like, reusable rockets are never going to happen. Like all the smart people said that so it's like, why this 435 billion versus 10 billion? Like let's get to the meat of that. Like what did he do that no one else could do? Like why was NASA fumbling the bag? Incentives are all wrong. But then it comes down to the reusable rocket. Elon is like, he's a DaVinci. He's about to invent something and commercializes it that changes the cost, that allows it to become a disruptor and change the industry and actually change the world and not be something on paper. So he's scheming on some private jet on the way to Russia. Like, why the hell does it cost so much money to build a rocket? It's actually not that expensive to buy all these materials. And next thing you know, he takes it upon himself to build the first reusable rocket. And it's so funny. You hear him as analogies. He's like, how many people would buy a plane if every time you drove the plane, it had to like crash after just one ride? It's like you wouldn't be doing planes. Like nothing's going to work like that. We got to reuse. So he comes up with this idea of the reuse rocket, which is impossible to do according to everyone. Like I want to stress that because it's so... all the know-it-alls at dinner parties, all my parents' friends, all the fancy schmancies, all the people with degrees, everyone that like amount of time, I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I feel like I can't get too on one about it, but I do have a bit of a chip on my shoulder about the people that say that Elon Musk like doesn't understand the technology and isn't an engineer, because it's just so wrong. And I've just seen it time and time again. And like the amount of times the like people who think they're smarter than Elon Musk syndrome, people like explain why reusable rockets were, I don't know. We don't need to get carried away on it, other than like this was such an unprecedented moment of innovation to not only happen, but to happen in the private sector with such minimal funding, not in NASA, proving that innovation to get the next leg of space, proving that to get back to the moon, proving that to get to Mars, we needed to be in the private sector. We needed Elon Musk or we would have stalled forever. And we know people who work at NASA who have that same sentiment. They're like, this was dying. This was going to go away. Like we were just wasting money. I think that's a microcosm for all of government. But this is to paint the heroic story of then we have SpaceX emerge. They actually create the reusable rocket. They have flourishing space economy. We have all these other startups that are raising money at millions of dollars of prices, working with pharmaceuticals, doing this and that to try and to work on this amazing space economy, which SpaceX has reinvigorated because the reusable rocket worked against all odds. It's a fraction of the cost to move things. That's a coincidence. Isn't that like what he's doing with the Cybercab? Fraction of a cost to move things autonomously. He's pretty good at it. So he figured out with SpaceX, arguably a lot more complicated than Cybercab, into space. And now that's become this massive business. And so what do you get though? That launching stuff into space, you got to get really good at that to build a really good enough rocket to eventually get to Mars. So Elon Musk is like, look, to subsidize you developing my rocket technology, I'm going to just launch stuff up into space for you. And then I'm going to get paid that way and keep paying my engineers to build a better rocket to get to Mars. Because like Roadster, you got to build the first rocket, then a better rocket, then a better rocket that's eventually cheap and big enough to make what you need all kind of happen.
So
and then
let's talk about that first rocket though.
Well, okay, I'll
finish
finish
your
this
thought.
analogy, then I'll let you hop in,
yeah.
which is Starlink. So this forcing function of, because it's this analogy we keep seeing of like, so the forcing function to create a reusable rocket, all of a sudden they're like, wait, what is an insane business that we could launch? Because what are people trying to pay us to do is launch satellite internet. Well, if we just drop the cost of launching anything into space, we just launched the cost of launching a satellite internet service. Wait, nobody's redoing satellites. What if redesign how satellites are built? All of a sudden they rent a space in Redmond, start redesigning satellites. SpaceX has just decided to become its own customer and launch a new company within itself called Starlink, which is going to be the internet for the people in Mars. And also democratize access to information when governments try and withhold it, which is a super awesome humanitarian cause. But the point being is now that forcing function for SpaceX's reusable rockets paved the way for this now hundreds of billions, maybe even eventually $1 trillion business in Starlink, which is the internet service. And SpaceX is like, wait, if we launch this internet service, we'll make way more money than launching stuff up into space. We can sell internet, not just rocket rides. And now we have two business lines, and now we make even more money, and now we can get to Mars even faster. So now SpaceX has figured out how to make money because they have Starlink, way more money than rocket rides, but they're going to start the rocket rides business is going to bubble up because we're going to go to the moon, then we're going to go to Mars, and eventually as the railroad between Earth and Mars, I think it's hard to even fathom and wrap your head around that, the size of that business once we have fleets of Starship ascending to Mars every 2 years. But anyway, that's my SpaceX rant, Aiden. I know you have a gazillion thoughts, so...
Well, I just want to just chime in on their Roadster moment was the Falcon 9, named after the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars. It's called the Falcon 9 because it has 9 Merlin engines, which is like their core kind of engine. And the first time that landed itself was in 2015. So this was only 9 years ago that the first rocket kind of landed itself. Since then, in 2020, they had the first human space flight. Since then, they've done about 13 human space flights, and they're on track to launch about 148 times this year. So I think that's about every like 2.9 days or something like that. We're launching rockets. We'll be at daily before you know it, a rocket launch a day, which is just a crazy kind of place to be in. And so, and 70% of these launches are for Starlink, to your point, which is they're eating their own dog food. They're using the benefits of reusable rockets to cover the Earth in free Wi-Fi.
And so also transparency. And a flex that we're proud of is that we invested in SpaceX. So full disclosure, we think we did. You know, we tried to buy in a little bit best we could like a few years ago. And it's been such an exciting like journey and thing to think outside the box of this business of like, what will they cook up next? Like they just came up with Starlink, this insanely valuable thing, like going to Mars. What other technology, what other hydroponic technologies they have developed, what tunneling technologies, what air purification technologies, like the amount of technology that is going to get developed by the Mars ecosystem that SpaceX unlocks. This is like as forever I've thought about like the maturity of humanity, you know, like we're milking so many resources off this planet. And in many ways, this involves us all expanding to space because we all have 401ks. We're all invested in the wealth of humanity. And if we don't expand, the addressable market for humans is capped at Earth. There's some number. There's a finite amount of resources. Like it just feels like a dead end. So this idea that our trajectory isn't just kind of like this dead end and maximizing Earth, but is actually like this. And instead of being at maturity, we're at the start of this incredible exponential curve where we go across the stars. You've unlocked this like Pandora's box for potential of humanity, because now potential went from it's at maturity in this asymptotic form of our planet to now unlimited potential of the universe as we decide to expand. And that is why SpaceX, I think, is more than a government, because it's like more than anything. It's like this movement that we're going to look back on. And like one of the most pivotal times in history is like when we went from a 1 planet species to a 2 planet. I don't know if they'll count the moon state or Mars as the first thing, but like this is such a, it's, I don't even want to get bogged down talking about the financials of SpaceX too much because I feel like it's such a like bigger than, and Elon still controls over 50% of it. He doesn't want to IPO it, which sucks because I know everyone wants to buy in. I know that's what the top comment on this video is going to be like, oh my God, I got to buy SpaceX. And we're going to be like, we can't help you. And believe me, there's been people, it's not Elon's fault. It's not anyone's fault other than like the system, frankly, like the regulation that we have that tries to keep the rich richer, that basically favors super rich people to invest in private companies. And then you have when companies do go public, they get screwed by lawyers and the press. And so it's a nightmare to go public. So if you're a CEO who has a huge company, your hands are kind of totally tied. And Elon Musk had such a horrible time with Tesla that there's the risk of sacrificing the mission for short-term thinking if you go public. Because SpaceX has such a big mission to go to Mars, they don't want to go public because they don't want to sacrifice that long-term thinking. I think there is a way, and it actually breaks my heart that you think that Elon Musk thinks going public sacrifices his ability to do long-term thinking at SpaceX. Like that means the capital markets are broken. Like literally, we have the biggest, most potential company in the world, and the reason why it's not going public is because we can't make it long-term focus because the market incentives are so perverse. So it's a weird thing of now it's the messiest IPO, we've called it, because so many people own SpaceX. There's so many paper trails of who bought into what fund and all this stuff. It's like an insane case study on, I don't know if you want to add anything on that of like the private market flavor of SpaceX and how unique it is in just the startup world, because we see it and I think we take for granted sometimes how close we are to it. Like, so SpaceX is valued at 250 billion. So I'm just going to lay it down to you right now as if you were like my homie and you're like, Gally, like I want to buy SpaceX. Like, I don't care. Like this, like, and of course, nothing I say on the show is ever financial advice. And this wouldn't be either. I would tell my homie that too. Like, this isn't financial advice, but if you really want to buy SpaceX, you can't. You cannot, there's no way to be sure that you're buying SpaceX. You're going to have to rely on a second party. So you're going to have to go through a second party who you have to trust that, and it's basically a IOU. It's a paperwork that says that second party who owns SpaceX shares is promising to give you them later, but that paperwork isn't really that enforceable. And when they actually do get money to cash out, they can decide to withhold as much of it as they want. It's a whole trust thing. So step number one, if you want to buy SpaceX, you can't actually buy SpaceX. You have to buy a piece of paper that says you have a promise to buy SpaceX, and that's not really enforceable by law and is actually like a super sketchy gray market. So you have to do that. The second thing you have to do is you're not going to be paying 250 billion. You're going to be paying like 300 billion. They're going to be paying an extra 10 G's like this, and then you're going to be paying 20% of the profits, and there's going to be all this fine print, and you're going to have to wire it by tomorrow, no exceptions. And it's so... And that's a little bit of a rant, but that is, so long story short though, is people could, like if I wanted to buy SpaceX right now in the private market, I feel like I could probably buy it for like 350 billion with fees all included, but I wouldn't have reliability that it actually was SpaceX, and so I'm just not doing it.
And it's also crazy because you have the uncertainty that you're actually buying SpaceX. At the same time, they often have minimum check sizes that need to be large. So you have like you want to put in a check, but it's like, well, you need to put in 50 or 100K.
Oh yeah, it's not even like you can put in a G.
And then you don't even know if you're actually getting the SpaceX shares. So it's just like all these layers of risk, and then all these fees. So and then you don't know when there's ever going to be liquidity. Like you're saying, SpaceX could stay private forever. Maybe Elon never wants to take it public, and then you don't know if the person that runs the shares, they could sell it in a year. Like you don't maybe have access over the shares that you buy. So yeah, the whole private markets around SpaceX are a shit show to say the least.
And it's a fascinating thing where Elon has kept the valuation never too high, never too low, to kind of keep it on this consistent uptrend, which is insane maturity that no other founder has the discipline to do, which I think is also just very interesting. Like the way he understands financial engineering he's a genius at that, and no one even talks about that.
And it's crazy just how quickly he's scaled up the revenue of SpaceX from this kind of like, oh, you can't kind of make money in space, right? And then like being like a launch company. Now I think the launch business is doing like
10B or something?
Like 9 billion or something like that, and then like the Starlink is doing like 4 billion like this year, and the Starlink is rapidly going to scale, and it's growing like 40% a year. And this is pre-Starship, which if you've been following, this is the rocket that's going to be able to launch Starlink, and it's designed around to launch thousands of Starlinks much faster than what the current kind of Falcon 9 is doing.
And what's your take on maybe it's Starship? That's kind of like their SpaceX's Model 3. Like they haven't even gotten to their like Model 3 kind of product, which is this rocket that is like so reusable and has such a big payload and such a good cost. Um, but I don't know. What's your take on what's the exciting future of SpaceX? Like, are we gonna go to the moon soon? What does that look like? Are we going to the Mars?
To me, like I think you got to start from like the business fundamentals perspective to be able to fund all that and like execute on that really well. And that's getting Starship basically lowering the cost of going to space even significantly more dramatically than what Falcon 9 is currently doing. And then you're designing it like I'm not sure if you guys seen the video of like kind of like a Pez machine just shooting out these Starlinks like really kind of efficiently. Right now, there's about 7,000 Starlinks in the sky. I think they want to eventually the full constellation would be around 42,000, 45,000, and so and then also these next generation Starlinks are going to be able to have. They just launched these direct to cell capabilities. So before you need to have this kind of little machine. It's what's it called, like a mini or something like that.
Yeah, the like receiver, the satellite dish.
The receiver to be able to have the internet services, but eventually they're going to have direct to cell. So I mean, this is then you're competing with the entire world for internet services, and that could unlock hundreds of billions of dollars to become the global internet provider for the entire planet. So that's when you can start to take really big risks of establishing large space stations. You know, they might come up with something like that. Entire moon bases, because you're just going to be generating so much capital. But I think they really need to build that foundation to be able to build some of these longer term projects. And then, yeah, once you build the moon base, then that's like endless kind of reoccurring potential revenue for people to use and benefit from and run studies on. You become kind of the infrastructure, the railroad, the base for everyone to use.
Like, why don't we have a moon base? I mean, it's a dumb question, but like, I also think this is a big deal. Like, maybe it's not going to be like the most value creating thing we're talking about, but it might be the coolest, which is like the moon
base.
state.
Yeah.
Like, can we go to, like, is there going to be Airbnbs on the moon? Like, that would be crazy.
There's a lot of complexities with the moon, right? I mean, you need to be able to generate power there, and 14 days, I'm pretty sure, of sunlight, and then 14 days of not, or 15 days of not. And so, yeah, make like getting your water. Like, there's so many complexities with building like a long-term kind of space station you can't breathe the air. That makes it extremely complicated to actually like pull this off. And the last time we went to the moon was 1972. So it's been a long time, and we're probably going to need some nuclear tech up there to generate energy and develop these systems where we can reuse water somehow that could then benefit on Earth. So yeah, there's a ton of tech stack that's going to need to be developed to make the moon like a feasible place to be able to have a base, and that's only going to be for probably a handful of people.
And I also feel like it's so exciting that they're going to do Cybertrucks and Optimus to Mars in 2 years. Did you see that just got announced? Or Elon Musk said it on Twitter.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, in 2026.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
send it there. Yeah.
Like, they're going to send Cybertrucks and dude, like, I'm sure we're going to be getting like a video live feed. Like, dude, that we're 2 years away, America's 250th birthday party, and like Optimus is on Mars, like celebrating it, like walking around, like,
dude, that's gonna be nuts. Yeah, wow, it's super exciting to see like Starship now have the rapid testing. Like you talk about like pace of innovation, like their ability to just do these Starship launches quickly, you know, is how they're going to be able to perfect it. And I think they're on track to do like 3 or 4 this year. So it's just their pace of innovation there is huge, and then it's designed not only to be reusable, and it's not only the third, like 3 times more powerful than the most powerful rocket ever built, the Saturn V, but it's designed for mass manufacturing. So you're going to be able to build thousands of these Starships.
And it's so fascinating. And I'm thinking about, like, don't alien spaceships use like some plasma technologies? Like, isn't that what the conspiracy theorists are talking to? Like, how do we get beyond our galaxy? Like, it's not going to be rockets anymore. Like, is SpaceX Skunkworks cooking up some sort of like fusion nuclear system on a UFO that can get us into some
next level physics?
Like, we need to push the bounds of physics if we're going to get beyond Mars, right? Or I don't know. I'm kind of curious, but I'm just saying, like, okay, so Mars is like the first planet with the moon. Like, what would be like the next move? Like, are we building like space factories? Because I think Bezos has touched on that, like a little bit more Star Trek-y, like something that floats. It's more of like an island that we visit. That's like our own planet that we build. Or
There's people
what,
that are
how,
scheming
what
on like small like nanobots, like very small structures that you could somehow do some sort of like wormhole to like a different galaxy or solar system or something like that. But like very like small scale.
did we need to hear Elon's take on this?
Yeah, right.
Like, what's like, is
some
it just
crazy
always
physics.
rockets? Like, is SpaceX going to come up with a new propellant technology?
Totally. And I think it has to do something with like kind of like wormhole, quantum, right? Like something with light and photons that is probably extremely disruptive technology that could be on parallel with like time travel, like jumping through the space continuum. You know, like that's what it is.
Well, it sounds crazy, but it's also just like SpaceX is almost this like turbocharged R&D experiment to push the limits of physics.
Yep.
And you think about how efficient they are, how now they're not broke, and now they can actually spend money and stuff. Now they can research stuff. Like, let's take that mentality to everything.
So how does this company become, just to like kind of bring it all home?
Yeah. Where were we?
Yeah, like how does this company become what we believe $10 trillion in 10 years, which would be
Well, 1 trillion today with 13 billion in revenue is an 80 times price sales. Is that higher than Palantir?
that that might be higher than Palantir.
Oh, wait, what were you saying?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how does this become a $10 trillion company, right? That's our thesis. 10 years from now, like how does it go from a 13
railroads to space?
Railroads to space needs to be doing what, like potentially a couple $100 billion in revenue.
I think Starlink has to be big. Maybe 10 trillion in 10 years is a bit of it. The problem is it's so hard to value what the launch business could become.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know. Like, what does it cost to go to Mars? Like, are they making like 50 billion every 2 years when we trip to Mars and then soon I don't know.
I'm not sure how the economics of Mars make sense from like a business standpoint, you know?
Right? I think people will cash in their SpaceX shares to go to Mars. That's one of my theories, is like, how do you get a dividend on SpaceX? How do you get a return? How do we pay people back? How about we give you a ticket? Like, you want to be one of the first people to Mars? Like, it's this many SpaceX shares.
Yeah.
And then they'll like delete their share count that way. It'll be like a de facto buyback that they do with services, not capital. Like an unheard of sort of new financial move. But I think it could be justified because I think people investing in SpaceX are doing it because they want to go to Mars. And so I think that would be like the coolest dividend ever for like, if you own enough SpaceX after they finally IPO, is like cash it in for a ticket. I think that'll be a big liquidity. I don't know. Elon hasn't mentioned. That's just like my random theory. But
it's an interesting theory. But and then that kind of got me scheming of like, well, you need to build up the moon base, you need to build up the Mars base, and I think that's where all these businesses start to show how they kind of intersect. Is you're gonna like you said, sending the Optimus and Cybertruck to Mars, you're probably gonna send a bunch of Optimuses to the moon and start to set things up, maybe, you know, and start to test things there. And you're gonna maybe have more. The population on the moon could be more robots than humans, like very early on, you know. Like
yeah, I feel like it's gotta be.
It's gotta be, right? So
like, if almost like send the robots first, and then it's like you get there. Like, that's what I was thinking. Like,
if
everyone's
something
thinking
goes
Mars
wrong, like they're gonna like send an Optimus and deal with it remotely, and I'll like teleoperate the robot to fix it outside, like, you know.
Dude, it might be artisanal when you get there. Dude, Optimus is like set up your bed. Like, there's like a nice little mint. Like, it smells all good. Like, you don't have to do the work because Optimus is doing it. Like, Mars could be pretty bougie from the get-go. I don't know. That's a new take. That's a new theory I had. I was like, well, Optimus is going first. Like, it's not gonna be like fancy, but like, I don't know. Like, maybe that's a bad take. But I was like, dude, it's crazy when you think about, yeah. Okay, SpaceX. I'm trying to think if there's any like, I personally don't know SpaceX as well as I know Tesla.
Yeah.
So that's one of like why I talk about it less. But it's really like and I'm like,
well, maybe one thing we could talk about is just when we bring up SpaceX, like, oh, there's other space companies, you know, or like, oh, what about Blue Origin? Or like, oh, you know what I mean? And I think you and I both know that like the lead that SpaceX has is so dramatic that like it's not well appreciated. Just like the capabilities they have compared to some of the other space companies. And yeah, like when I talk to my friends that are SpaceX engineers, it's just like, yeah, we're like leaps and bounds ahead of, you know, the competition in terms of how far we go into space, the reusability, the power. I mean,
payload,
the satellite systems.
Well, didn't like Boeing just fumble the bag? Was it Boeing? I said this
You
wrong in the other
yeah,
podcast and people got mad, but it was the didn't they have to send SpaceX had to go rescue the
rescue the rockets.
astronauts
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what happened
yeah.
basically. Like, dude, if obviously they got the best tech, like that's who they sent back
And
when
we'd be relying on
when
the
that
Russians to get to the ISS if it wasn't for SpaceX. You know, 'cause
yeah,
it's a
and
human
we were had to
Swiss.
go use them for the launches. Like, dude, that's crazy. So
It's just an
once again, it's like the how far ahead he is, and so it's how far technology takes a while to manifest into financials and like products that change everything. But I feel like the writing's on the wall with how far ahead the technology is for Tesla and SpaceX, and that's why we're thinking like this is such a fascinating time to look at the Elon empire, because it's like, wait, like the technology's there, but the change hasn't really happened.
And this is before consumers really act with the brand. You know, once people start to choose space Starlink as their internet provider, then it'll start to sink in. You know, but that hasn't happened yet. People see Teslas in the wild. People don't have.
Well,
Starlink on their
Starlink
phone.
is kind of blown up.
You're
Like,
right. They have a few million
in its own
a few
right.
million users, but when it becomes your phone provider, you know, and
Yeah,
people,
I don't think it will though. Your full phone provider,
Maybe
like it'll be
not.
like a backup, right?
Yeah,
I don't know
okay.
what their direct.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know how good.
Because
It's
that's
really
always been
gonna
a
be.
thing of like how much, like in Seattle or like some big cities, like you can't even get Starlink anymore. They're like, we're sold out because they don't have enough bandwidth in cities. Like it's not really designed for like
Mass.
super high bandwidth everywhere.
Yeah, but maybe
So
that'll
I'm
change with more
curious-
satellites. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That, and I think that's the interesting thing of Starlink is that's actually my question of Starlink is how disruptive is it? Like how many people can we have? 1 billion people on it? Can we have 1 billion people on Starlink at the same time with 42,000 satellites?
That's the question. Yeah.
What can they be doing? Can they all be watching a HD YouTube video?
Yep.
Like, I don't know. I just have no idea whether that's like 50 million's the cap or it's like 5 billion.
But let's
you know?
start with getting Starlink on every plane, cruise ship, and remote location.
Yeah, and it's
You
just
know.
cool infrastructure.
Yeah,
like
it's
if you don't
really-
have internet, like that's where it comes in handy. Like it's so key instead of building like all these pipelines and stuff. And so, and then like all the communication into space, which I think is another big reason that he needed probably a satellite communication network.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so should we talk? Like now, let's do XAI as our next one. Okay, so XAI. It took me a while to even figure out what was happening with XAI because it's like Elon buys Twitter, changes the name to X. Tesla's supposed to be the AI company, and then Elon starts a company called XAI. Very confusing, taken aback. First, people are like, whoa, like what's going on here? Basically, what it boils down to is Elon was the OG funder of OpenAI, watched how that company went into being a for-profit. Now it's one of the world's most powerful AI companies, lobbying with the government, also just very influential with zero competition. And he started that and actually was foundational with the technology of how that all came to be. And so he said, wait, Sam Altman really just bought a few $1 billion worth of these NVIDIA chips and then scoured the internet and like wrote the LLM code that I schemed up, or it was like our, scheme at OpenAI. I know how to do that. This isn't actually that hard of a company or tech challenge to build. I don't know. Maybe I'm simplifying everything, but the point is like this is Elon's answer to OpenAI. And it's built within Twitter as Grok, and he couldn't incentivize engineers at Tesla to build it within Tesla, which is what he wanted to do. He had to give them equity in a new sexy startup. So that's why he created this new entity, XAI, which I think X itself owns 25% of, or some sort of relationship like that. And then XAI raises $6 billion in their Series B, like you said, at $24 billion, $25 billion, insanely quick, massive valuation out of nowhere for a company that's like a dozen employees created out of thin air. And they raised $6 billion, the most we've ever seen Elon Musk raise at a Series B by massive amounts. Like SpaceX has raised like $12 billion in his whole history.
Largest raise ever done that Elon Musk has ever done for a single company, $6 billion, right? Like we've never seen him raise that much capital in a single raise.
And so, yeah. And so, would you have anything to add of and so now they're building this data center in Memphis.
Well, I think for you, like I agree with you. I was confused first. Like, how does this fit into it? Okay, it's his AI play. Like, how like what's going to be its like biggest use case? But you realize like we need AI to have a search for truth, right? That's what it says on the website, is kind of be truth seeking, and whether that is scientific truth or truth with the news, that AI needs to kind of be something that can weave through all the propaganda and biases of the human species and try to get us closer to understanding the universe. And that's really what the intention and mission, again, the mission behind XAI is truth, which is understand the universe. And that's really the goal. And yeah, some of the biggest tech that they've kind of done is they built the largest supercluster of NVIDIA chips in the world in Memphis, like you were saying. and that has, I think, what was it, 100,000 NVIDIA GPUs. He built this in 120 days, like unprecedented. People would have thought it would have taken 4 or 5 years to build a supercluster of chips like this.
And Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the world's most valuable company, said that himself. Elon Musk is like a genius. I've never even seen this done, right? Like that was...
Yeah, like the amount of technology that goes into organizing chips like this is very unique because you have power, you have cooling. There's a lot of things that go into building something like this from an engineering perspective. It's not just you buy the 100,000 chips and you can use them. It's the infrastructure of how to set up a supercluster, which is essentially building like a super AI.
It's funny because NVIDIA is such a fancy big company, but like the more I research their product, it like seems hella annoying to use. Like you got to like have engineers to like even figure out how to install it or use it. Like it's so complicated, like what you were saying.
And so XAI is planning to double this. They already built the largest one, and of course Elon is like, well, this is not big enough. I mean, like he's always building a larger gigafactory, a bigger rocket, and so yeah, they're gonna the double the supercluster, which is called Colossus, which is an epic name.
Great.
And yeah, and they recently launched their API, so now people can kind of benefit similar to the OpenAI models, becoming kind of the app store for AI applications, these large models. And like you said, it's Grok, so people can interact with it.
Built into the X app, using the
X
data
app.
on X. Very interesting. And it's almost like back to the altruistic thing of Elon is like, where does this go? The search for truth. He felt like OpenAI wasn't doing it. He wanted that to be a nonprofit. He sees it go profit. He sees it start to get biased. There's only one biased AI in the world. That's not a good world. So now we need to create another like based AI is what XAI started as. That's why I thought it was like a meme at first. It was like, I'm creating the based AI. And we're like, what?
And he was making all these memes about closed AI.
Closed AI. And just like roasting OpenAI. Because dude, if you were him, you would have been pissed too.
Yeah.
Like, you give like 300 mil to them as a nonprofit and then they spin it into a for-profit and give you no shares. And it's like the most powerful technology in the world, which is supposed to be safe. And then they make it for profit.
And closed source.
Like, dude, like, that's why it's like, bro, like, I get Elon's side. Like, I remember someone asked me, like, he's suing Sam Altman, dude. I'm like, dude, if I was him, I get it. And then he had to drop it because it's just a bad look. And honestly, he probably doesn't want to deal with that bullshit because he's kind of a nice guy. But like, I think Sam Altman's moves, he still owes us an explanation to the tech world of like, why did OpenAI like go to for profit and kind of shaft everyone? And isn't it ironic that it's called closed? Like at least acknowledge the irony.
So XAI is still very early, so there's only so much to talk about right now.
Well, but also we can use Grok.
But we can use. So I wanted to kind of get into like, where do they monetize? How does this become a massive company? Are they gonna? Is Grok gonna be its own app? Is it always gonna be within X? Like how ChatGPT is doing like, or OpenAI is doing like $5 billion in revenue or something like that, or $4 billion. Like how does XAI scale to billions in revenue? Because as far as I understand, they probably aren't doing that much in revenue right now.
Yeah, I would say probably de minimis in revenue, like if anything. But the flip side is like, why are these super intelligence as a service companies becoming the world's fastest growing company category? And why ChatGPT, XAI, Anthropic, Perplexity? What is this?
Yep.
This is a new type of company where we have like a super intelligence, like a true AI, like it's AI as a service and super intelligence as a service. And it is such a big idea, like whether it's education or helping you with anything. It's like you have your super intelligent imaginary friend with you wherever you go. And we're realizing that is going to be such a big idea. He's going to live on your Neuralink or, everywhere.
I think we talk about things like, Tesla did the 3 and then they unlock, autonomy. SpaceX does Falcon 9 and they unlock Starlink. XAI does Colossus and builds a supercluster and then they unlock, and it's going to be something massive. Elon's coming up with something big, but he's going to come up with something that's like, we're going to build like the best recruiting platform in the world, or we're going to build the best sales, or something that he's going to build like a tens of billions of dollar opportunity that's going to just come out very quickly. That's going to probably shock people. And like you said, the applications are limitless, but I'm really curious where he's going to start.
I think it's Grok. Like Grok is like, we're seeing it. It's just Grok. And that's why it seems like, what's it going to be? But it's just Grok's going to be everywhere and smarter, and we're going to want to hang out with Grok.
So Grok
right now, I don't want to hang out with Grok.
Grok for everything.
Yeah. Like Grok will be the number one app on my phone. Like I'll be talking to Grok. Like I wake up and Grok's chatting to me. I'm chatting to Grok. And
so just the Grok app.
I'm like, yo, Grok, like go do my, my bonsai that I bought that like is super annoying to take care of. Yeah. Can you actually do the water thing on it and prune it the way I want it with that YouTube video I watched last night? And Grok will be like, of course. And then that'll send a Tesla bot. And it'll be like, bot number 1 is on it now. Or, Grok will tell me that, and I'll perfect. And I'll be the way I manage my Tesla bot fleet of like everything.
Yeah.
And my communicate, it'll be like Jarvis, and Tesla, everything is software controlled if you're a robot. So everything can be controlled by voice. So I think that's a even bigger thing to think about with like less friction in the future is how we go into a voice first future, which has always been overhyped and we talked about. But I do think that is kind of where it goes. It's like this, that movie, this kind of imaginary voice assistant friend that's always with you. Like that is, I don't know, maybe
it's a hardware product.
Like Friend.
To me,
you see that
Friend.
that guy's company, Friend. He's crushing it. Shout out to that guy. Never met him or don't know him, but I've seen his product, which is Friend, which is like the wearable AI. Like he's got some Apple energy, like some Steve Jobs.
But
20
to me,
years ago
I think
energy.
you're onto something with bringing that up. Is this could be one of the applications with XAI is a consumer hardware product that is somehow is always with you.
The phone,
dude.
I think
the earpiece to your point or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, there's maybe something there. And then we're starting to get into some Neuralink territory, which is interesting.
I'm trying to think. It's a good question of like what is really the killer app of, yeah.
I think it's early to tell, and like we'll see, And I think a good place to end it is XAI is in the process of raising several $billion dollars, according to some public news sources, and we'll see kind of how they kind of unleash some products for the next few years. But this is Elon's most recent company.
Fascinating. And I want to end it by saying I've been pushing for Tesla to invest in XAI. I think that would be a great way for like to bridge the exposure gap here and have Tesla investors who Elon always wants to do right by, who supported him and are long-term thinkers, who get the mission, who understand the company. And Tesla has $30 billion in cash on its balance sheet, just throwing away tons of billions of cash flow. XAI needs capital. This is the perfect thing of like Elon's company is producing too much cash. This is the thing we want to invest in because it's the super intelligence as a future that could be a multi-trillion-dollar company on its own. Like, let's get some equity.
Empower Optimus.
And it's going to power Optimus. And it's going to be in the car. The amount of synergies here are absurd. That's why Elon wanted to start it within Tesla. So I've been pushing for that. Elon replied to my post about it, and I think we should still push it. So is Alexandra, and they're trying to get it on the shareholder approval docket. But then it's like, well, they took Elon's stock away. So there's a bunch of that's another reason of the implications of when the government starts to mess with the companies and the governance. Well, it's like now Tesla's not buying XAI because there's too much paperwork involved. But and now we're hurting.
And maybe
every 6 million Tesla shareholders are getting just screwed out of value that should have been theirs because of the way the paperwork had to fold out. And so now I really think though that if we can get this approved and pushed through in the right way, we should make a strategic relationship where Tesla gets to buy in and owns a huge chunk of XAI and cements this partnership. And then XAI stops selling out to lame investors. It's sell out to Tesla, your number one partner, who's going to launch with the Optimus. Don't dilute your own empire, Elon. But the problem is they stripped away his ownership of Tesla. So who cares? So he's not incentivized to get Tesla the equity of it. But
this is going to be a reoccurring theme, which is how do all the companies connect and in what way in their end form,
which we'll have to drop at the end.
So maybe we'll get to that at the
end. Okay,
so
let's
move forward to X.
Let's move. Yeah. Because X is. Well, let's do. Let's do X. So I think X is fascinating. I own Twitter stock a long time ago, and it went nowhere. Jack Dorsey did nothing. I love Twitter. I've been on it since 2011. Such a fawn. You
got me on Twitter in X, and
dude.
I've changed my life.
I love chirping on Twitter. It's such a cool platform, and it's always had insane potential, but made no money. Horribly managed, flat for 15 years on the IPO, center of culture, always on the news. Every politician, everyone uses it, and they just coast off that. And we're the cushiest, wasteful Silicon Valley company of all time. Love Jack Dorsey, but he created zero shareholder value for public market investors. So then Elon Musk comes in, sees it. He's the biggest user and most influential person on Twitter. We saw this meteoric rise. I mean, that's how I got on the Tesla earnings call. Was he replied interacting with him on Twitter is insane. He interacts with his fans, his customers.
A lot of the retail investor movement happened on Twitter.
Dude, so many movements happen because with him on Twitter and replying to world leaders and different influential people. Twitter is the new Silicon Valley. It's the new town square of the world. And so then when he saw, I think, the Babylon Bee get like, there was kind of censorship that was happening on Twitter, and he saw like its potential going away. And it's like, well, look, if Twitter goes away, all these other social media networks are controlled. Like the opportunity to create this like free everything information app is there, but Twitter was fumbling that bag. And I think there was so much evidence from it, from the flat share price, from the no edit button, from the zero innovation, from the censorship allowed from the government, from, you know, just never making a profit. Like there were so many flaws in it. So then Elon buys it over, and it's like reinvents the potential. Like, yeah, you have to do like all these hard changes, which hurt the numbers, the financials at first, but now they're slowly building back up. And I think it's going to be one of the most valuable companies in the world because it has rebrought free speech. It potentially is going to go down as the most influential thing Elon Musk has done in his entire legacy across everything we've mentioned, because it had such an influential role in the election and politics, and it's become more powerful than anything in the media. X has created the citizen journalist and citizen media, which has been a movement that's been bubbling forever. And now
talk about a case study, right? Like everyone when he bought it, he fired about like 85% of the staff. You know, he quickly went into the war room, was trying to figure out the code base, what was going wrong. He did the Twitter files to show that there was some shadow banning happening. You know, there was like he was doing this all in real time on X, kind of as he was trying to fix things. Everyone said the site was going to crash, it was going to go broken, everyone's going to leave it. You know, it was like, oh my god, he overpaid $44 billion. Like he's firing the whole company, it's going to crash and burn. You know, and then all of a sudden, like to your point, you see more innovation than ever on X. And he did the whole rebrand from Twitter to X. I was like, oh, like this is so weird. But it really is a new platform, right? It's not Twitter anymore. It is X.
I love the rebrand. Dude, it just everyone loves to whine about like anything new, and I think it's dope to have the like balls to just do that and like make it like, yeah, like we're changing. Like the Twitter era was great, but it's over.
It's a new era.
It's the everything app, and we're launching it and we're doing it. And like, dude, this everyone's going to tell you not to do that, but Elon has always wanted to and pushed it through, and now X has emerged as this crazy new brand for free speech. They're paying creators. That's a massive change. You know, I'm making as much on YouTube as more on X than I do on YouTube now. And it's amazing for creators. They've implemented this system to like get the little guy paid.
And it used to be more of an elitist system. Think about it. Like all the people
that the check mark.
The check mark. Like you had to like get like know somebody at Twitter. It was for the journalists. Like it was like a total elitist system. Now anyone can just pay $8 a month, say that you're down with free speech, get the benefits.
The blue
and
check mark.
Everyone can get the blue check mark. It's huge.
I'm just thinking, I'm like, it's funny that it was blue.
Yeah, and now advertising's coming back to the platform. They have about 500 million active users, so I think like the usage is like it's back. To your point, it's back on track. It maybe went down for a bit, but now people are realizing you can't avoid this. Dude. Disney and those other brands tried to boycott it, but they're like, wow, this is like becoming more powerful than ever. And what do you always bring up? Biden announcing that he was stepping down from the race. He didn't make a video. He put it out on X. So yes. X is really becoming the town square.
Dude, thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's a big one. Like the biggest. Yeah.
And like our whole thesis is like, I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, that X isn't something like, oh, you have a few thousand followers, like, oh, who knows how valuable it's going to be. Like, no, this is going to be critical kind of like online communication, as far as we can tell, for like the next decades to come. Like, this is where you're going to have your online brand and communicate your ideas to the world.
They're moving into video. That's insane. That's a much bigger market, like much better way to monetize. So they're moving into video and TV. I think that's massive, and it's going to take a while. The creator earnings infrastructure is huge because now it's like we're building a business on X. And I don't know. I just think it's like a very profitable business model. Once you have a social network with that kind of moat, it can do insane cash flow.
So do you want to say a few things to wrap up about the future of X, like how we see this playing out kind of in a few years?
I think the future of X, the biggest thing I would like to see with X is a redesign, because it's never changed. Like it's still kind of Twitter. Like it doesn't look like sexy and new. And I think there's a lot of wasted like white blank space on the app. And I know that's kind of a hot take because I also love the UI and I'm nostalgic for it. But like, I don't know. I could see like a total revamp of the whole app to like make Grok front and center, to make your little bank account with payments and creator earnings easy, and then the news feed, and then more of a dedicated videos tab. Like I think just like don't be afraid to change it, and because X is changing, so why are we still like in the box of Twitter? Like that would be one thing.
Yeah, the feed has really changed a lot too. I think there's a lot of feedback. Like you used to be kind of in your niche corner of X or Twitter, where you'd be in the Tesla community, or you'd be in like the EAC or the biotech community, and then it's just kind of felt like a very like noisy and loud town square now. And I think get back to like allowing it to be easier to kind of go to the ideas that you want and to seek those out, and you can do that by following the right people. But I think a lot of people don't just do the following tab; they like to kind of get new content as well, and so dialing that in new ways could be really interesting.
Okay. All right, so let's go to Neuralink. The last thing I would say, I guess, to my end prediction with X is it goes from like Twitter to like TV. Like I think it's going to be like perceived as like TV, and we're like almost going to forget that it was like about writing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, especially with this NFL partnership that announced recently, maybe you'll start to stream NFL games on X.
Go Seahawks. Okay. Neuralink. Founded in 2016, publicly unveiled in 2019, 1,500 electrode device. I was at that event. It was insane. Literally felt like the start of a sci-fi movie where our brains get controlled. Then in 2020, they unveiled, this is Elon Musk's brain chip company. I'm running through the stats because we've been going a while. But this is what comes after the smartphone. This is what this is the new thing of what Steve Jobs created, which is like our connection and symbiosis with technology, which is like changing what we are as a species and like merging the worlds of like biology and like digital worlds. Like that is what Neuralink is on the cusp of, and like transmitting as much human data into like the zeitgeist of the internet as possible and receiving as much, and that being like pushing us forward to the singularity in a new way. And Neuralink, okay, so founded in 2016, 2020, they unveiled Gertrude, which was like after rats in 2019, which was the pig, and they were just tracking her brain activity, which was so cool. Shout out to Gertrude. 2021, they have the monkey, where they have this macaw monkey playing Pong with its mind, playing video games. That was insane, broke the internet. Then first patient in 2024, shout out to Nolan, the quadded mod, who's just been taking the internet by storm. And he has like been making content. He just seems like a super cool guy and seems to be loving his Neuralink. And it's a little bit of like a crazy sci-fi moment of like, whoa, like there's a Neuralink or not, and it's working. And apparently there's a second one. And so point being, my intro with Neuralink is this is the tiniest company on our list, but it's probably the one that you're going to think the most about in your life, because you're going to have to decide whether you want to upload and get the chip.
Yeah, no, totally.
Or I don't know. And
I think that you might be one of the people that you might think, I'll never get that in my brain. But try being someone that doesn't have an iPhone now, right? Like it's really hard to operate in today's society without an iPhone. So that's maybe how Neuralink could feel in the future, is that it'll be hard for you to participate in modern society without a Neuralink. So just kind of, I think that perspective is a helpful framework. But keep in mind, a large part of where Neuralink is going to be for the next 6 to 8 years at least is going to be helping people with debilitating diseases that have no other options. So these patients, like Ali mentioned, are people who are quadriplegic, which means they can't really move their arms or legs. And so interacting with the digital world is incredibly difficult. And so by allowing them to get planted with Neuralink, they're able to engage in the digital economy, play video games, write out messages. And so this is a huge thing, because you're now enabling them to engage in the digital world. And that's freedom on a lot of different ways. And yeah, it's just incredible that Neuralink went from this crazy idea that everyone I know in the scientific community thought was completely ridiculous, and that Elon knows a lot about rockets and cars, but he doesn't know a single thing about biology, to now seeing a trial happening, and it seems like the first patient, they learned a lot. I think there were some detached electrodes, but they're fixing that, and this is something that could help thousands of quadriplegics in the United States. And I think there's something like 60,000 quadriplegics in the United States alone. Like this is like a big market, or 100,000.
And that's just the first application. Like there's all these other that's just the first application. Like there's all these other diseases and like conditions that Neuralink can help with before we get to like Kim Kardashian getting one and that going viral.
Totally. And I think we don't.
Oh, dude, that's such a good tweet.
Yeah,
like Kim Kardashian getting Neuralink. I gotta tweet that. Wait, keep going.
Yeah, but I don't think we realize how transformative this is for people who have debilitating diseases, like maybe it's Parkinson's or ALS, where their brain is starting to fail them in their limbs. in their muscles, and you can use electrodes to kind of fix the problem. And it's all going to be digital. And yeah, this is how we're going to be able to also engage with the digital world. So yeah, they still have like a long way to go. I mean, if you think about where Nolan is, like he's able to engage with the digital screen, but like eventually, like you could see a Neuralink allowing him to move his arms again. You know, bring someone back from a quadriplegic to be able to then become use all their limbs again. And I think that is truly the promise of Neuralink, is going from not just controlling a screen with your mind, but allowing someone like Nolan to be able to walk again.
And so inspiring. And it's crazy that just another field we haven't even discussed of like medicine and biology and understanding and neuroscience and like all these things that we hold so sacred as like such important things to learn about and research and like discover and make advances on, and how Neuralink is pushing the boundary on all of those so much more than any, you know, paper, academia, or fancy schmancy government thing that happened. It's like, wait, like this is probably the most exciting thing in science or biotechnology that's like happened in decades. And it was completely private sector Neuralink with this insane idea and the innovation to build the robot that implants the device. It wasn't just this device that was innovated. It was also they made it so there's not going to, like when I went to the first Neuralink thing, it was like, look, there's not that many neurosurgeons. If everyone wants this, like Elon Musk's thread of not just making it for rich people, not just, but how do we make this a mass market thing that affects everyone and really touches humanity as a whole? Well, we have to automate the installation. And that's why we're going to build this entire robot so we don't need a brain surgeon to install Neuralink. And so that's what's another whole, when you dive deep on the facets of this isn't just some toy little chip he's experienced. This is a whole ecosystem for a new way to like build electronics into the brain.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because like traditionally, so many people are coming out of these neurological problems from a biology perspective, and then of course, like when everyone's digging, Elon zags and he comes at it from like brain computer interface perspective, and you're thinking of like the brain as like this electrical machine, and like really thinking about things differently from first principles, which makes his work, you know, so much different than how everyone else is going about it.
So do we have any predictions about Neuralink? I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on Neuralink and just like talk about it for hours. But I think it's super cool. And then you think about like how you could control, it's a new interface to control software. And what that means for like, as software gets more powerful, like controlling your fleet of Tesla bots, like the way you're going to be able to interact with that kind of like through Neuralink is like insane. Like it's going to, the potential of like, you're going to be a Jedi basically.
You're going to be able to think something and a bot's going to move.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh,
like magic. It'll feel like magic.
It'll feel like magic. Yeah.
Like true technology and engineering feels like magic. And that's what one of the Elon's quotes. And I think that's like a crazy.
And I do think this is ultimately Elon's hedge against superpower AIs. Instead of trying to fight the machine or separate from the machine, we merge with the machine. And that's what kind of Neuralink is. It's like the connection with our AI and software and stuff like that. And this is going to be, of all of Elon's companies, I feel like this one has like the longest tail and like maybe in some ways like the biggest impact, this one in like XAI, because it really is the evolution of like intelligence and how we engage with machines, which is like evolution.
Okay, and then I'm trying to think, Neuralink, should we hit Boring Company?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so Neuralink, insane, and it's like, we talked about the analogy of like Neuralink going in and researching, SpaceX going out and researching, like these crazy, like pushing the limits of what's happening with humanity. So we need to make a whole nother podcast about Neuralink, clearly, because that one in the long run, I think has just as much potential as like a Tesla, a SpaceX, or one, like it could be just as big, this idea of what it means to be human in your own brain. It's hard to even think about. And let's go to the last one, kind of my favorite company, The Boring Company, because shout out to my grandpa who was in the tunneling industry way back, my Italian grandpa. So this is like big part of my family and like what I learned about growing up was, and I even interned on like the Roman subway tunneling thing in high school and learned about the tunnel boring machines. And so now Elon Musk is coming up with a tunnel boring machine. Like, are you kidding me? Like this is so, it just blew my mind. And he starts it with a tweet being like, a tweet, how funny is that? Or X post. It's like, I'm annoyed about traffic, so I'm going to build a tunnel and like we're going to create a system so we can get around LA without traffic.
And what does he call traffic? The ultimate boss battle. Like this is, right? Like, and Elon's a gamer. Like this is a massive problem and it's really hard to solve.
It's like nothing more soul sucking than being stuck in traffic.
Even billionaires have to suffer from it. You know, it's just like,
it affects everyone.
It affects everyone. Yeah.
Dude, traffic. No one likes traffic.
So what is Elon doing? How does Elon go about solving this? He's like, you know what? We can build underground and we can build an entirely new ecosystem. It's not going to disturb things above ground. That's a big thing that I think people get fearful of. Is this is common? We already have tons of infrastructure, whether it's water, electricity, different types of piping that's underground today, or fiber optic cables for internet. So this is not that radical. And in fact, that's a lot of what Boring Company could end up doing. And so what have they been focused on is kind of getting their core foundational technology to the point where it can have its roadster moment, where it can have kind of its Falcon 9 moment. And so their tech is called Proof Rock or Proof Rock. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And they're on version 3, but they're iterating rapidly. 4 is supposed to come out soon. Each one's getting better and better. And yeah, they've already completed like 15 tunnels. They've one underneath the Giga Texas that goes out where they can like shoot out. They call it the birthing tunnel, where you can shoot out these Teslas into the cybercabs into the world, which I think is super cool. And their biggest project, I think their most well-known one, is they already have a loop. It's about like 1.8 miles at the Las Vegas Convention Center to get around there. But the full plan, and then this is like a $500 million project, which is to build 68 miles of tunnel around Vegas, from like the airport to the convention center to the stadium to the Strip. And so you're going to have like this entire underground infrastructure in Las Vegas, and that's going to be a case study for a bunch of other cities.
And it sounds like what you're saying is like the Boring Company is still a little bit in R&D mode, almost earlier than Neuralink. Like they haven't totally crushed it with their first massive tunnel completion. That's a huge success. Like they're still kind of doing these test tunnels, rapidly iterating on the machine itself that builds the tunnels, the machine that makes the machine.
Yeah, but they are making money. Like I think like
they have revenue.
Yeah,
and they're worth, what is it, 5.7 billion in the last funding round, 5 to 10 billion ish.
2 million passengers have ridden in a Boring tunnel at the Vegas Convention Center.
That's pretty good.
That's not nothing. And they've done 15 tunnels, but in order for them to start to build like massive tunnels around like San Antonio or like some places in Texas and Florida, which are on the roadmap, they're going to need significantly better technology to be able to, just drill a lot faster. Because right now it's just moving too slow, so it doesn't make sense to do a lot of these projects.
And tunneling is one of those things that's really hard to like get hyped about because it doesn't seem sexy. So it's like tunneling is like, that's why it's called the Boring Company. It's like the most boringest company. It's like tunnels. And that's why they made the flamethrower, because they're trying to be fun. But it's like tunnels are just so boring. It's like, okay, we need to move this like wire, or we need to move like all this water. Like water is a big tunnel thing. So those are things you don't see that don't touch everyday consumers, but are super important. Like LA, like not much water, we're piping it all in. Like, are those even, like, I don't know, there's probably need more tunnels. And so the bureaucracy, it's funny because just even thinking about the tunnel industry in my family, of like how it was the technology was invented by my grandpa like so many decades ago, and then they were kind of coasting on that for a while. Lack of innovation, like very similar to like the automotive industry. And then you see someone like Elon bringing all these Silicon Valley engineers, electrifying it, digitizing it, making it a robot, and that same playbook is now being applied to tunneling. I think it's really different. It's taking a really long time. This is like a super slow industry. Like they're trying to beat the snail. They're trying to go faster than Gary the snail. Like that's how, like, it's just kind of a funny metaphor for like how slow these projects and just everything is in this industry, and you're literally drilling through rock, but how the potential is huge, and we always need tunnels. We're going to need massively more tunnels. Think about Mars and the tunneling technology needed there, how Proof Rock even can fit on Starship. So there's insane synergies, but I think this is cooking up a super interesting company. And you think about like trains and kind of like different types of transportation there with the loop, like there's lots of angles. I think the transportation and the water angle are the ones I know. There's probably a gazillion others, but this is just, I can't even believe that this is another company. Like I'm always like ready to hear that they're giving up on this one.
Yeah, and you know what's also like really nuts about this is I don't think people realize the technology behind Proof Rock is that it's 90% the thrust of the Falcon Heavy. So this is basically a rocket going underground and drilling, like the power behind it, and it's like electrical. And so like things like that, you're like, wow, like the R&D that they're doing on this thing is like next level, and they're iterating rapidly, getting faster. Right now they're doing about, I think supposedly 1 mile per week, They want to get to 7 miles per day. So when you start to be able to, like, that's a very stretch goal. But if you're starting to do those numbers, like, think about how much infrastructure you could build. You could start building underground systems connecting different cities if you're doing 7 miles a day. And that's a stretch goal. They have to go a long way from a mile a week. But yeah, it's just the technology is scaling, and they're getting there.
I was trying to find the thing because I think the Boring Company is purchasing Teslas for their systems, and not even just that, but there was originally purchased like parts of Teslas for their boring machines. So like that overlap in technology, like sharing all that electronics and the kind of technology and the electrification from Tesla has helped the Boring Company. So and now, okay, let's get to the last part of this, which is we could also spend a whole podcast on the Boring Company, but where does this all go from here? And this idea of the X holding company, something Dave Lee talked about, Elon talked about, this idea that can you combine, you're basically building up equity in the Elon Musk network state that we've been talking about, the Elon Musk empire. Its currency is equity in his companies. Then you can think of those equities being cashed into this greater X technology, X holding corp. That's been kind of like the end vision. Like you have this, everything converges into this one entity called X, and that entity would essentially be what we think is the world's largest company, worth 25 trillion in 10 years, 100 trillion in 20 years, and would control a huge part of the Mars economy, the space economy, the energy infrastructure of Earth, the super intelligence of Earth, the communication infrastructure of Earth, the TV and creator journalistic infrastructure of Earth. Like it would be
robots everywhere, Neuralink in your brain, communicating with the software world. Like it's touching everything. And yeah, you said 25 trillion. Like this is gonna, like this isn't. Also, like after going through all this isn't like we're crazy saying some wild thing. Like this feels like it's very like probable and like could happen by the way things are going and in Elon Musk's capabilities.
Yeah, and it's like at what point do you start to doubt Elon Musk? It's like, it's like how many times this guy got to be right? Like how many times do you have to do the impossible? How many times do you have to succeed before you just give up and are like, wait, what is he actually saying he's going to do? Because he's probably going to do it. And so, I don't know, being close to it and seeing it, it's the only thing that I've taken away from Elon Musk and his companies is he always does it bigger, better, and faster than I even thought he could. It's not like he doesn't do it. It's like, then I go to Austin and I'm like, oh my God, like they built an even bigger, cooler, fancier factory? Like it's just like I'm like, this was the Tesla that like was kind of like, I saw Fremont looked a lot different than Giga Austin, and I'm just like, I can't, it's crazy. So
somehow he always has surprises and they blow your socks off. Like we haven't even talked about the Tesla Roadster, which he's hinted about being like the fastest car ever built, potentially flying, and this is just like he calls it the cherry on top, and who knows what else he's cooking across all of his different companies that have yet to be released. So it's,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's just,
and it's so cool to just have like the DaVinci of our time, making his inventions, making them happen, proliferating them. Like, I think it's an amazing thing, and too many people get lost in the sauce of like criticizing Elon Musk. Like it's become cool to criticize Elon Musk, and I just think it's so it really like it just kind of shows a lot more about you than him, because it's like he works so hard to try and make all our lives better and is so successful in so many different ways. Like he's just such an icon that we need to appreciate, and it just blows my mind that that's not the status quo. And it's like that's a hot take for me to even say that is like insane. And I also have a personal thing on it because it's like I've worked with Elon on Tesla, and he democratized the shareholder movement with Say, and like listened to me and went against all of Wall Street, had me on the conference call, let me have the institutional tour of the Tesla factories to show on my YouTube channel. No other billionaire did that. No other CEO helped the little guy and the retail investor. Like he's been doing the right thing. Like I've seen him do the right thing at every other turn when David Einhorn, Jim Chanos, all these other douchey billionaire people that you think are cool are actually just assholes in it for the guap, like just bad people, but Elon's not. And so that's the one thing. It's like you get close to your icons, which disappoint you. Like Elon actually like didn't disappoint me. He was awesome. He was even cooler than I expected. Like every time I met him, nice, the homie, chill, funny, like a guy you'd want to hang out with, honestly. And so I just think it's like, it just makes me mad when people don't appreciate him. But I don't know. So I kind of wanted to end it with that. It's like a little bit of humanization to this person that we think is like larger than life and has this agenda, and everyone has a hot take. And I end it with the people who always ask me about Elon, because they always like, they see my YouTube channel and they ask me about it. They're always trying to get some sort of take and round me up about it. And I'm look, Elon is always trying to do the right thing, and he's always misunderstood. That's like what the pattern I see play out for the people who don't get it. Like, he's trying to make the most money to make humanity better, and then filter all his actions through that, and then you'll start to understand it. But if you don't want to do that, then you won't understand it. And so, but I just think it's like a lot more of a gift to just be like, look, we're so nerdy and I love technology and I love my Tesla. It drives itself. It's so fast. It's so smooth. It's good for the trees that I love. Like, it just like that tangible change in such a big way. Like, there's no person that made a change that was like that. And that's just Tesla. That's not even Mars. That's not even Neuralink. So,
and I think one thing that's really difficult for people to wrap their minds around is traditionally when they see someone that's like a hardcore business leader or capitalist, they think of them as, you know, someone who cares about money or is just focused on growing their business. But they don't understand that like Elon is one of the most mission-driven people that's like just pro-civilization, and his companies are just a vehicle to be able to do that than like anyone on the planet. And you could argue, oh, the nonprofit warrior or like the advocates think they're doing all this good, but like Elon's actually doing the most good for a society, and that's like a common misperception. And he's also one of the wealthiest people in the world, and he's working at the absolute hardest to support the mission. And like you look at some of the most recent work he's doing with Doge in America, is because he truly cares about America and trying to get the U.S. budget back on track and trying to help the American people pay less in taxes and become profitable again and just be a well-run country. And he's doing this not as people put on him because he's trying to help his own companies, but because he's doing it because he cares about the American people, and he's doing it for free. And he's sacrificing, you know, his very finite amount of time on this planet to be able to do it. And so, I don't know, I'm like personally like incredibly grateful for him and what he's been able to do, and I wish that more people felt that way.
Yeah, totally. And like, I tried to call him out on politics and I was wrong about it, but I tried to call him out and he heard me out. Like, he replied and heard me out.
You're like,
but how many people in my family, if I told them that I disagree with them on politics, like, fuck you, Allie, I'm not talking to you again. But Elon Musk, the richest, most powerful person in the world, is like, I'll hear you out.
I hear you.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Like, I'll listen to your opinion, and we can still be homies, and like, it's all good. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I saw him just reach out to like Alex Soros the other day, the big guy from the Democratic Party, crazy. And like Bernie Sanders. Like, Elon's not this like trying to like be like my way or the highway. He's like, let's have a dialogue, and like he's very, very pro civilization, and I think that's like the biggest thing that people need to get is like he's trying to push humanity forward, and his companies are his vehicles to do that.
And okay, so that's a great place to wrap it up, and hopefully we're right, and we didn't, you know. And Elon does right by us. Like, who knows what's going to hold? Like, in 10 years, like, where will this empire be? How will this all unfold? Like, who the hell knows? But I think it was super, like, it was just super cool to, like, take a pause and think about how far the Elon empire has come, where it's going, what could be next. Like, just, I think sometimes we need to hit pause, because the best show isn't on Netflix. It's in real life, and it's the Elon Musk show. Like, it's like we're all living in the Elon Musk show. We're trying to pretend like we're not, but like, so I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know it's going to be unexpected and fucking wild, and we're not ready. We think we're not going to be ready for it, and we'll probably be all okay in the end.
Yeah. And at least we'll have fun along the way. We'll have fun. Yeah. It's a good time.
All right. Good shit. Thanks, Aiden.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. See y'all next time.
Thank you all.
Peace.